For as long as I can remember, the wilderness has been my refuge. Life here isn't for everyone, but I've grown to love its rugged beauty and solitude. My days blur together, filled with chopping wood, fishing, and watching the weather. It's a simple life, but it suits me, especially after the noise and chaos I left behind. Here, amidst the mountains and the sea, I found a peace that had long eluded me. I moved to this remote Alaskan territory a couple of years ago and mostly keep to myself. The town is small, just a handful of buildings along the shore. I only go there when necessary, mainly for supplies. With winter approaching, a trip to town became unavoidable. Months had passed since my last visit. The settlement, home to about 300 people, has a couple of gas stations, a grocery store that doubles as a hardware shop, and a small flight service. I needed to stock up before winter fully set in. As I tied up my boat this morning, I unexpectedly slipped and fell into the icy water. Amber was there to help with the lines. She's about 19 or 20 and always on the dock when I come to town. While she's friendly, I keep my distance. She's much younger than me, and I respect her family. It's obvious she has a crush on me, but she's just too young for me to consider. As she was tying up the bowline, a reckless boater sped into the dock area. They came in fast and slammed into reverse, sending a huge wake across the water. Amber, with her back turned, was thrown into the water as the wave hit the dock. Without hesitation, I dove in after her. The cold shock nearly took my breath away, but I managed to swim to her. I glanced up to see the boaters laughing. Anger surged through me, but I focused on getting Amber back. I grabbed her under the arms and dragged her to the dock. Another person helped pull her up, and I used the cleat to haul myself out. The water was around 38 degrees, and we were both shivering uncontrollably. We needed to get warm immediately. The best option was the shower on my cabin cruiser, which was nearby and had a full water tank. Go get Lacey. Tell her Amber fell into the water. She's at my boat and will be in the shower warming up. She'll need a change of clothes. You got it, JW. I watched Ben take off down the dock. For a man of 65, he moved like he was 20. I was impressed. I managed to stand up, shivering uncontrollably, then bent down to pick up Amber, who was curled up and shaking. I had little time before I'd be too weak to move her. I carried her onto my boat, started the generator, and rushed to the lower berth. I quickly turned on the shower and exposed off Amber's wet clothes, pushing her under the warm water. She leaned against the shower wall as I exposed down to my boxers and joined her, rubbing her arms, back, and legs to get her blood circulating. I was grateful for the on-demand water heater I'd installed. It wasn't burning hot, but it was warm enough. The tight shower stall made it difficult, but I kept rubbing Amber's body to warm her up, feeling my own temperature rise slightly too. She had been in the water for about 5 to 8 minutes, and I had been in for almost as long. The cold had chilled me to the bone, but after 10 minutes, Amber started to come around. I took a chance and stepped out to heat up water on the stove. We needed something warm to drink. Dripping wet in my boxers, I struggled to light the stove with my shaking hands. Just then, Lacey came in behind me as I nearly whined in frustration. Whoa, JW, you're nearly unclothed. Where's Amber? In the shower with hot water running. Need to make hot chocolate. You get back in the shower. I'll handle the water. Tom will be here soon. What happened? Later. Get in the shower now. I didn't think about how it looked, being nearly unclothed in the shower with Amber, their daughter. I was just too cold to care. Amber was still shivering with her back to me, so I kept rubbing her to warm her up. Your mom's outside and your dad will be here soon. Damn, move, rub. We need to warm up. I'm warm now. This is a dream come true for me. You saved my life, JW. I just pulled you out of a bad situation. You didn't think twice. You saved my life. Yeah, and almost froze doing it. Move your arms and legs. Your mom's making hot chocolate. A few minutes later, I heard Tom, her father, come aboard. I knew it was time to get out of the shower and into dry clothes. Then it hit me. Their daughter was unclothed. What would they think? I stepped out first, wrapping a towel around Amber. Her mom handed her clothes as I dried off quickly and pulled on jeans and a sweater. Lacey handed me a cup of steaming hot chocolate. Here you go, JW. There's a bit of Irish in it. Thought you both could use it. Thanks, Lacey. How's Amber? Oh, she's fine. Just had her first shower with a man she thinks a lot of, and one she's now seen most of, Lacey said dryly. I know. I blushed. It was the fastest way to warm us up. I didn't mean anything. Hey, JW, we know. We'd have done the same. You do what you need to survive. That water is freezing. Tom nodded. How long were you in? About 8 minutes for Amber, 6 for you? Felt like hours, I admitted. With how low your body fat is, I'm not surprised you were so cold. You both were close to hypothermia. Lacey gave Amber a once-over. Amber blushed and looked away. Yeah, I'm just glad we were close to the dock when it happened. I knew JW would save me. He's that kind of man, Amber said, her voice full of admiration. It worried me a bit. What happened? Ben mentioned that big cruiser came in fast and its wave knocked Amber into the water. He said you dove in without a second thought. I can't thank you enough, JW. You saved my baby's life, Lacey said, talking quickly, sensing the awkwardness in the air. Yeah, I jumped in because I saw she was struggling to breathe. That cold water can cause muscle spasms that are hard to control. She's lucky she didn't swallow a lot of water. Whatever you did, you saved her life. I can never thank you enough, Lacey replied, looking serious. Well, we should thank that girl on the boat for our cold bath. She came in way too fast, and the wake was at least 4 feet high, I said, letting my anger show. Probably that actress. She's been here with her crew scouting locations for a movie. She's a terror, from what I hear, Tom added, sounding disgusted. After some more talking, Tom, Lacey, and Amber left. Before stepping off the boat, Amber hugged me tightly and gave me a hot kiss on the lips. I managed to pull away before things got more awkward in front of her parents. As she spun around and left, I looked at Tom and Lacey, who were laughing. Looks like you've got something to think about, JW. Better watch out. You might get hitched, Tom teased loudly. Amber, not far down the dock, blushed and turned away. Ben stayed behind, chatting about my heroics while I tidied up. I needed to head to the store for supplies, the whole reason I was in town. Amber's reaction troubled me. It was the first time she'd tried to kiss me, and she did it well. What were her parents thinking? Later, I headed to the general store to pick up what I needed. I overheard talk about the Hollywood group that had flown up to experience Alaska. I rolled my eyes. A few weeks here wouldn't teach them what living here was really like. Too many people were showing up each year. I missed the days when there were fewer people, and everyone minded their own business. I've become a bit of a hermit. I'm 35, living off my land in the Alaskan wilds. Made enough money in the 90s to set up here, so now I mostly live off the land and sell things online to cover some expenses. I enjoy the simple life. A few years back, my fiancée left me months before our wedding. Looking back, I realize I dodged a bullet. Since then, I've decided I don't need or want a relationship, at least for now. As I approached the store counter, I overheard some chatter. She's here to film a movie set in Alaska, one man said. Flying out at the end of the week in her fancy jet from Ketchikan. JW, you should meet her. She's a looker and about your age. Maybe she's searching for a real man, Jacob teased. Cut it out, Jacob. I'm not interested in any woman, especially a movie star. She almost got me eliminated today, I snapped. Why so cranky? You just took a quick swim, someone else chimed in. Why don't you try that swim and tell me how nice the water is, I shot back. And stop trying to set me up, I'm fine. Relax, JW, Jacob laughed. But Emma thinks you could use a woman around. Yeah, right. Like I need that headache, I muttered. Emma walked in just then. What's this about, JW? You do need a woman, trust me. Please stop trying to find me one. I don't want or need it. I was lucky when the last one left, I replied irritably. Jacob changed the topic. Got any more of those cedar picnic tables ready? Yeah, I've got 4. I'll drop them off in a few weeks, or maybe Paul can bring them if he stops by. Paul's crabbing again? Emma asked. Thought his wife would have stopped that. He's providing for his family. She should appreciate that, I defended. Women prefer their men alive, Emma shot back. Not everyone wants to be tied down, I replied. Blame the one who left me, not all women. She was never right for you, Emma said dryly. Maybe, but I'm less angry now, I admitted. After a round of laughter at my expense, I settled my bill. It's $374.98, Jacob said. I paid cash, grabbed my supplies, and headed to my boat. With these provisions, I'd be set for winter. I had a knack for reading nature's signs, and I felt a harsh winter was coming. I ran back to the store to get my mail. Inside, a crowd blocked the walkway. I need some lotion. My skin's drying out. You probably don't have anything good, but I'll take whatever until I can get something flown in, an annoyed voice said. Yes, ma'am, I'll get it for you, Jacob replied, practically stumbling over himself. I chuckled as I squeezed past her. What's so funny? She snapped. Him, I pointed to Jacob. I've never seen him move that fast. He never helps me like that. You must be royalty. If anyone else talked to him like you did, they'd be thrown out. You find strange things amusing, she huffed. Learn some manners and how to handle a boat. You nearly eliminated someone today, I shot back. Her bodyguards moved in, but I warned, back off or you'll get hurt. They tried to intimidate me, but I faced worse. You're the guy who jumped in, right? She asked. Yeah, that water's deadly. Hypothermia sets in fast. You're overreacting. You seem fine, she said. Took 45 minutes to warm up after just 8 minutes in that water. You almost eliminated her and me, I retorted. Maybe you should take a dip and see for yourself. Grabbing my mail, I pushed past. I can't stand people who think a short visit means they understand my world. You're a rude idiot, she called after me. Yeah, you have a nice day too, I replied, holding back from saying worse as Emma entered. This actress reminded me too much of my ex-fiancé, spoiled and self-centered. As I walked out, I overheard her asking Jacob about me. I missed his response, but I knew he'd smooth things over. He ran a business, after all. Her attitude irritated me, but I couldn't deny she was the most beautiful woman I'd seen in years. Not that it mattered. Beauty doesn't excuse recklessness. Most women in town were either married or too young. No single women my age, and I had no interest in a married one. Besides, I was already dealing with keeping Amber at a distance. I realized Amber had grown into a beautiful woman, which shook me since I'd always seen her as just a kid. Heading back to the cabin, I chuckled, picturing Jacob rushing to fill the actress's order. He acted like she was special, but to me, she seemed snobbish, just looking for publicity. Back at the cabin, I unpacked and started dinner. As the stew warmed on the stove, I looked out to the beach and spotted some driftwood to collect in the morning. Some of it could be used for making tables, and the rest would become firewood or material for home projects. My workshop is powered by a generator, and the cabin sits on a hill with a stunning view of the ocean and mountains. I own 50 acres, debt-free, so my expenses are minimal. Over the next few days, I gathered driftwood from the beach and offshore, towing it with my D6 cat. I cut it into planks and firewood, enough to keep warm through winter and make more picnic tables. My shop is decorated with glass floats I find while beachcombing. Most are green, but sometimes I find blue, yellow, or even red ones. Locals admire the setup, but I just see it as adding a bit of color. A few days later, I was on the mountain collecting branches for chair making. The weather was awful, but you can't wait for perfect conditions here. During lunch, I saw a white streak with black smoke in the sky. At first, I thought it was a meteor, but it was a small jet with a burning engine. The jet came in fast at a bad angle. The pilot tried to pull up, but the left wing hit the water, spinning and breaking apart with each wave. I knew it would end up on the spit, a dangerous spot. If it crossed, it'd be lost along with anyone on board. I raced to the beach, jumped on my four-wheeler, and sped to the spit. Next to the burning wreck, I grabbed my fire extinguisher. It was a 10-pound unit, nowhere near enough to put out the blaze, but enough to buy time. I aimed the nozzle at the smoking fuselage and emptied it, hoping to get inside and help whoever was still there. I saw a limp figure in a seat, released the seatbelt, and dragged them away. I went back 6 more times until the flames blocked my path. The pilots were likely dead, given the crushed cockpit. I tried to get closer, but was forced back by the heat. The bodies I pulled out were the movie star and her group. She was the first one I had rescued, though I hadn't realized it at the time. One of the 5 men I saved started coughing. His cough was more like a before-end-of-life rattle, with blood coming from his mouth, ears, and nose. Weakly, he grabbed my shirt. "Tell my wife. I'm sorry. I love her." Then he went still. He was gone. I checked the others. Another man had likely died before I pulled him out. Both bodyguards were dead. The 4th man was badly injured. His gray face worried me. I covered him with my raincoat. The second person I pulled out was a young woman, part of the actress's group. Her arm was clearly broken. She needed medical help, but the worsening weather made it doubtful the Coast Guard could reach us. The actress, the first one I rescued, had some cuts and a head wound, but seemed mostly okay. I hoped she could help. "Are you hurt?" I asked her, concerned. "My arm and back are sore, but I think I'm okay," she responded, wincing. "How's Sam? The guy with glasses, chinos, and loafers?" She hesitated, her voice breaking. "He didn't make it. He asked me to tell his wife he loved her." I felt a pit in my stomach. "Oh no. What about the others? Janice, Paul, Jim? The pilots?" "Rest," she said quietly, trying to steady herself. "Janice's arm is broken. Paul is in bad shape. Jim, the pilots, and your bodyguards? They're gone." I could barely speak. "No, you need to get help. Paul is my only lifeline." "I can't move him," she replied urgently. "It might make things worse. Go sit with him and Janice. I'll make calls and grab supplies. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Understand?" She nodded, dazed. I watched as she walked over to Paul and Janice. None of them were dressed for the cold. They probably thought they'd be in LA by lunchtime. I hurried back to the cabin and radioed the Coast Guard. The response came quickly, but filled me with dread. We can't fly out until at least the day after tomorrow. 75-knot winds and zero visibility. The cutter's grounded too. You're on your own, JW. I trusted the chief. If he said they couldn't come, it was bad. But I was desperate. Can't you send anyone? The man won't make it without help. The chief's voice was grim. What about the others? Pilots are dead, I answered flatly. 4 others dead. 1 woman with a broken arm, another with cuts. The man's in bad shape. His pupils are uneven. Could be a concussion or worse. I'm sorry, JW. We can't risk it. I'll have the surgeon talk you through some things. I'm not a doctor, I protested, feeling overwhelmed. I barely keep myself out of trouble here. You can do this. The surgeon will guide you and we'll come as soon as we can. I swallowed hard. What should I do? It's getting colder. The doc says to move him carefully with a blanket. I'll try using the trailer's lift bed, I muttered, formulating a plan. Be careful, he warned. Get him inside and near the radio. You might need to set the woman's arm too. Got booze? Yeah, but not for me, right? I joked half-heartedly, trying to lighten the tension. No, for her. Have her drink before you set the arm. Set her arm? I repeated, my voice rising. I'm not trained for this. The doc will guide you, the chief assured me. It'll heal faster if set now. Just relax, you can handle this. I was in shock. 1 minute I was having lunch, the next I was playing doctor. I loaded blankets, pillows, and jackets, then sped back to the wreck. I parked close to Paul to limit movement. The women were by his side, visibly shaken. The actress looked at me, her eyes wide. Did you call emergency? Help is coming, right? I shook my head, trying to keep my voice calm. In this part of Alaska, emergency is you and me. Coast Guard can't come. This is a rare storm. Her face paled. But what about Paul and Janice? I called the Coast Guard, I replied. A doctor will guide us. It's the best we can do. That's not good enough, she cried, her voice breaking. You're not a doctor and I have no training. Listen, I said firmly, trying to keep control. We're all they've got. Help me move Paul. Keep his head aligned. She was frozen for a moment, but I didn't have time to argue. It was getting darker, and we had to act fast. We managed to get Paul back to the cabin, stripped off his wet clothes, and put him in my bed. I had a king-size bed for the women and took the couch. I radioed the chief again, my voice tense. Is the doc available? The injured man's here, barely hanging on. Yeah, the chief replied quickly. Give him the vitals, temperature, pulse, skin condition, listen to his heart. Okay, hold on, I said, taking a deep breath before getting to work. Janice, surprisingly calm, gave the vitals. Weak pulse around 40, cold and clammy, swelling on his right side, head wound, weak breathing. Paul's in serious trouble, the doctor said, but we can only wait. He then explained how to set Janice's arm. I was nervous, but Janice made it simple. She took a swig of whiskey and said, You have to do this. It's a simple fracture. You can do it. I've never done this before. You'll be fine. Trust me. Somehow I managed to set her arm without more damage. Splinting went smoothly. When she came to, Janice said, Lucy, let JW check your head. No, I'm fine. Lucy shot me a glare. My arm's broken, so I can't help you. Your cut is still bleeding. Let JW bandage it, Janice insisted. The booze gave Janice some courage, but Lucy shot me a look I couldn't quite decipher. Part superiority, part fear. I didn't want to focus on her right now. There were more urgent injuries to deal with. JW, do something, Janice urged, her voice tense. Lucy's losing blood. Damn it, I muttered under my breath. She'll hate this. She doesn't want me touching her. And how do you even know my name? Jacob and his wife told us, Janice explained. And she doesn't hate you. It's the opposite. I do not, Lucy snapped, glaring at Janice for siding with me. He's an idiot, a dirty bum, I shot back. I'm not a bum. If you weren't so stuck up, never mind. You need help. Or do you want to pass out and have me take care of you when you can't argue about it? Enough, Janice cut in, clearly done with the bickering. Lucy, lie down. JW, get the first aid kit. Lucy reluctantly lay on the couch, still fuming. I grabbed the kit and went to work while Janice hovered nearby, keeping a watchful eye. When I touched Lucy's head, she flinched. Hold still, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I'm not going to hurt you. Just need to clean and cover the wound. She flinched again, but I focused on being as gentle as possible. The bandage wasn't perfect, but it would do the job. Once I finished, Lucy tried to sit up, but Janice gently pushed her back. "Stay put," Janice ordered softly. "JW will get you a blanket and pillow." "I thought you two would take the king-size bed," I said, glancing between them. "I can carry her in there." Janice shook her head. "No, she needs to rest here. I'll sleep in this chair. You take the bed." "No way," I insisted. "You two take the bed. I'll carry her in so you can both sleep better. It's a king-size, plenty of room. My house, my rules." Later that night, I woke up to find Janice standing over me. She bent down, kissed my forehead, and adjusted the blanket. "You didn't have to do that," I murmured, still half asleep. "What was the kiss for?" "To say thank you," she replied softly. "You saved us." "No, I just helped," I said, brushing it off. "Paul's still not out of the woods, and Lucy's sleeping too hard. You should get some rest. Your arm must be killing you." I took some Tylenol and more whiskey. Hard to sleep with the pain. "Hey, that's good whiskey," I teased. "No, it's not," Janice shot back, smiling faintly. "Bet it cost you about $14. "Maybe," I admitted, grinning. "But that's not the point." "It doesn't matter," she said, her tone more serious now. "What matters is you're not as bad as we thought. You really tried to help us." "Yeah, well, it just means I can't mind my own business." "You're a real pain, you know that," she teased. "I'm sorry, Janice," I said, softening. "It's been a long day. You need to rest. Help might come by morning." She shook her head slightly. "Help is already here, in the form of you." "I'm not much," I muttered. "Trust me, you are," she replied quietly. The next day was quiet, except for the storm raging outside. I called the Coast Guard again, but they still couldn't fly or send the cutter. I made a fire to keep the cabin warm. As I stood by the stove, I heard someone approach from behind. "What are you doing?" Janice asked, her arm still in a sling. "Making breakfast," I replied. "Eggs, bacon, pancakes, and toast?" She raised an eyebrow. "How do you have a toaster out here?" "Generator out back," I explained. "Got a toaster, microwave, TV, even internet." "TV?" she asked, clearly surprised. "Satellite, not cable. I'm not as backwoods as you think." She smiled faintly. "How's your arm? Need more Tylenol?" "I'm okay," I assured her. "Took some earlier. Can I help?" I shook my head. "Just sit and talk. You shouldn't be moving around with that arm." "It's my arm, not my leg," she said a bit stubbornly. "I need to do something. I owe you." "You don't owe me anything," I insisted. "And if you try to help, I'll carry you back to bed." "Sounds like macho Neanderthal talk," a voice chimed in. I turned to see Lucy standing there, arms crossed, looking skeptical. "She's supposed to rest," I said defensively. "I'm not an idiot, despite what you think," Lucy shot back. "Yeah, and you've got a chip on your shoulder about me." "Both of you stop," Janice snapped, irritated. "Lucy, let's go check on Paul. Leave JW to cook." Lucy rolled her eyes. "I'm not hungry. Whatever he cooks would probably eliminate me anyway." "That's not fair, Lucy," Janice said firmly. "You need to apologize." Lucy glanced at me with a mix of contempt and something else. I turned back to the bacon. "It's fine," I muttered. "She doesn't need to apologize." There was a pause before Lucy spoke again, her voice softer. "Yes, I do. I'm sorry, JW." "All right," I replied, trying not to sound smug. Lucy's eyes flashed angrily. "That's it? All right?" she snapped, clearly expecting more. I was caught off guard, but before I could respond, Janice stepped in. "Lucy, stop! He accepted your apology. Let it go." "But what about how he's treated me?" Lucy demanded. Janice sighed. "Come talk to me, Lucy. Leave JW alone." "Fine," Lucy huffed. The two of them left to check on Paul. What they didn't know was that I had been up several times during the night, checking on him. He was hanging on, but I was growing more anxious, hoping the Coast Guard would arrive soon. After breakfast, I went to my shop for some peace and quiet. I didn't realize someone had followed me until I heard the door creak open, a gust of wind nearly sucking the fire out of the stove. "Wow, you've got quite a place here," Lucy said, her tone surprisingly friendly. It unsettled me. "It's how I make my living," I replied, trying to keep things professional. "You made these?" She pointed to my latest table, clearly impressed. "Yeah," I said. "From spruce and cedar I collect from driftwood." She seemed genuinely surprised. "Those ugly logs turn into something this beautiful?" "I cut, dry, and shape them into tables or whatever else," I explained. "What else do you make?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Cabinets, bed frames, chairs, mostly for log homes. I answered. You're quite the craftsman, she said, her praise making me blush slightly. I've had some practice, I replied, feeling a bit self-conscious. All by hand? She asked, stepping closer. Mostly, I said, nodding. I have some power tools, but I do a lot of it the old-fashioned way. Amazing, she murmured, reaching out to take my hand. Your hands look rough, yet they feel soft. She traced her fingers along mine, and I felt a sudden stirring inside. I quickly pulled away, my heart racing. I need to check the generator, I muttered, trying to escape the tension. Lucy looked disappointed as I rushed outside, confusion and nerves battling inside me. Why would she be interested in me? I had nothing to offer someone like her. For the rest of the day, she watched me, starting conversations that made me uneasy. I'd find an excuse to leave. Janice seemed amused, laughing at my discomfort. That night, I insisted they take the bed. I settled on the couch. The next morning, the storm raged on. The Coast Guard said they still couldn't fly out. I followed the doctor's advice, but wished they could take these folks off my hands. That morning, both women borrowed my clothes. Janice wore an oversized shirt, while Lucy's borrowed clothes fit better. Lucy stayed close, her usual sharp comments gone, making me more nervous. Later, I secured some logs on the beach. As I struggled with the cables in the rain, a hand appeared to help. It was Lucy. Together, we secured the logs. I was surprised she came out in the nasty weather. It made me rethink my opinion of her. As we walked back, I saw Janice watching, smiling. That night, after dinner, we all sat and talked, mostly about me and my place. Later, I woke up to see a shadow over me. A soft hand touched my face. You're my knight in shining armor, she whispered. I pretended to sleep, thinking about her words. On day 4, I checked the wreckage for salvageable luggage. There was nothing but rags. When I returned, Lucy was folding clothes. Sorry I was gone so long. Your luggage is all charred. Looks like you'll be wearing my t-shirts again tonight. They're comfortable, she teased, giving me a look I couldn't place. Fine, take any shirt you want, I muttered, retreating to the kitchen. While I washed dishes, Janice stood beside me, attempting to help with her one good arm. After realizing she couldn't do much, she simply watched. You know she's falling for you, she said quietly. No, it's just a crush. You put a small group of people together, and it happens. Once this camp is over, she'll move on. She'll find someone more suited to her life back in Hollywood. I know Lucy better than anyone. She's changing, and it's different this time. She's falling for you, JW. Don't hurt her. Me? Hurt her? Once the Coast Guard gets here, this will just be a memory, some adventure she'll romanticize until someone new comes along. You're underestimating her, Janice insisted. She won't forget you. Janice, we haven't dated, kissed, or done anything lovers do. She's just in summer camp mode. Janice laughed. Oh, you're in for a surprise. It'll be interesting when Lucy gets back to Hollywood. You mean when she goes home? No, I mean Hollywood. She thinks of this cabin as home now. Janice, it's been 4 days. There's no way she's in love with me. It's just summer camp syndrome, trust me. That night at dinner, I thought back on our conversation. Maybe my comparison wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. Lucy hung on every word I said, almost embarrassingly so. I'd handled women who thought they were in love with me before, like Amber, so I figured I could handle Lucy too. Later, I woke up to a shadow standing over me. In the dim light, I saw it was Lucy. I pretended to sleep as she softly whispered, I love you, JW. You're my knight in shining armor. Her hand touched my shoulder and her lips brushed my cheek. It took all my will not to react. Even after she left, I felt the warmth of her touch linger. I spent the rest of the night arguing with myself while checking on Paul. I told myself it was just summer camp syndrome, but I kept wondering, what if it's not? By morning, the storm had calmed, and sunlight began breaking through. We had breakfast, and I prepared Paul, knowing the Coast Guard would arrive soon. Half an hour later, we heard the helicopter approaching. I stepped outside, hoping the doctor was on board. He was. The doctor and a medic entered the cabin, quickly hooking up IVs and getting Paul ready for transport. We'll take him and the young lady to Ketchikan, the doctor explained, gesturing to Janice. Then we'll come back for the others. He turned to me. You did a good job, JW. Paul's going to be okay. I'll stay with Lucy for now, Janice said firmly. The doctor hesitated, but eventually nodded in agreement. After the helicopter left, I noticed Lucy staring at me, visibly unsettled. What? I asked, confused by her gaze. Tears welled up in her eyes. You saved our lives, she said softly. I shrugged. Just did what anyone would have done. She shook her head. No, you saved us. They'll be back soon to get you too. You'll be out of here soon. Janice looked at me, her expression full of a newfound understanding. You really did save us, JW. Paul wouldn't have made it without you. And you set my arm like a pro. The doc was on the radio, I replied, trying to downplay it. Yeah, but you did the work, Janice insisted. Fine, I muttered. You're welcome. All of you. Lucy gave me a long look. You really don't like praise, do you? She asked, her voice soft but teasing. I just did what anyone would do, I repeated, feeling uncomfortable. No hero here. It is to us, Lucy said, her tone more serious. Okay. You're welcome, I muttered again, feeling the weight of their gratitude. Lucy let it go, but the look in her eyes told me she wasn't finished with the conversation. Later, the Coast Guard returned to pick up the women. I was relieved. Their presence had been making me increasingly nervous. As Lucy prepared to board, she surprised me by hugging me tightly. Then, before I could react, she kissed me on the lips. I was stunned. What was that for? I asked, still processing the moment. For helping us, she replied with a smile. For saving our lives, and for not being as nice to you as I should have been. You're my knight in shining armor. Could you apologize to the girl who took the swim? I feel bad about that. Sure, I said, still taken aback. Take care of yourself, Lucy. Maybe things will go smoother if you come back. I'll visit when I'm back for filming, she said, looking over her shoulder. If that's okay with you? Of course, I replied, smiling despite myself. The door's always open for you. As the helicopter's sound faded, the place felt different. In 5 days, everything had changed. I realized a few things. Lucy wasn't as bad as I'd thought. I could handle emergencies, and, most troubling, I needed a woman. That last realization hit harder than I wanted to admit. Just those days with Lucy and Janice had changed my mind. The FAA investigators came not long after. They never found the cause of the jet fire. Gradually, life returned to normal. Months passed, but that feeling of needing a woman only grew stronger. I knew I had an issue, but didn't know how to handle it. At Christmas, I got a package from town, gifts from Amber. The delivery guy said she'd asked him to drop them off if he was in the area. It made me start thinking about Amber differently. Now, I had 2 women on my mind. Winter dragged on, but eventually the snow melted and spring arrived. It had been a long, harsh season, but I got a lot done. I finished 25 table sets and some end tables. I decided to take them to town myself, since I hadn't been able to reach Paul to see if he'd made his crabbing trip safely. When I arrived in town, Jacob seemed to be in a mood. Hey, Jacob, how's it going? I greeted him. Pretty busy, he replied. The film crew brought about 100 people, so I've had to double my orders. Oh, they're filming now? I asked, trying to make conversation. Yep, he nodded. That actress has been asking about you. Seems you made quite the impression. Nah, I just helped when they needed it, I said, brushing it off. Not what I heard, Jacob said with a knowing look. Curious, I pressed him. What exactly did you hear? Before he could answer, Emma walked in, and Jacob quickly busied himself with something else. Frustrated, I tried again. What have you been hearing? Nothing. Nothing at all, Jacob said, avoiding eye contact. JW, has Jacob been feeding you stories about the movie, folks? Emma cut in, giving Jacob a playful scold. I'm not sure, I admitted. He mentioned hearing something about last winter, but now he's clammed up. Jacob, you should know better, Emma said, wagging her finger at him. Then she turned to me. That actress has been asking about you, JW. She's really interested. Wants to talk and thank you for the care you gave her. It was nothing, I shrugged, feeling uncomfortable with the attention. It was something to her, Emma countered, and to Paul and Janice too. Paul survived, you know, and he's been asking about you. They all have, especially the actress. She's keen on you. I was just lucky to help, I said, trying to deflect. Couldn't save everyone. But saving Paul meant a lot, Emma said, her voice softening. They'll never forget you. Got a thing for her, JW? She's quite pretty. No, I replied too quickly, feeling a bit embarrassed. Emma raised an eyebrow, clearly seeing through my attempt to deny it. Uh-huh, she said, not buying it. You do like her, and she's interested in you too. Stop, Emma, I said, feeling cornered. Don't go there. JW, you need a woman, Emma insisted, her tone more serious. No man needs a woman, I shot back. Might want one, but need. Priests and monks do fine without. Emma sighed. I won't argue your choices, JW, but you're wrong. You've been angry ever since that woman left you for that doctor. Now you've got a chance with a good woman, and that actress might be the one." "An actress? No way," I scoffed, shaking my head. "She's human, beautiful, well off, and has heart," Emma replied pointedly. "More than I can say for some." I frowned. "I thought you were my friend, Emma. You're not helping." "I am helping, JW, Emma insisted. "This Hollywood gal might be just what you need. It's time to move on." "Yeah, right," I muttered, unconvinced. "Why would she be interested in me? I'm just a hermit. I helped because I was there, that's all." She had no other choice. Emma was smiling, looking over my shoulder. I turned to find Lucy standing behind me. Janice stepped closer to me, causing Lucy to move aside. "So, JW, where's this flight service you mentioned?" Her eyes sparkled with mischief. I knew I'd have to point it out, but not as close as I had with Lucy. My face turned red, and Janice noticed. "JW, that blush says it all. Looks like you just realized you didn't need to get that close to Lucy earlier. Go on, show me where it is." "It's over there," I said, quickly pointing. I could hear Emma, Jacob, and a few others in the background snickering. "You're about 6 feet away from me now, just like when Lucy was standing here. Why did you get so close to her but not to me?" Janice pressed. I stammered, trying to come up with an answer. I wasn't thinking." Janice grinned and softened her tone. "Relax, I'm just teasing." Lucy moved beside me, hooking her arm through mine. I could smell her hair, which made me even more nervous. Janice, still smiling, said, "Maybe we should leave you two lovebirds alone to sort this out." "We're not lovebirds," I snapped, surprised at the harshness in my voice. Lucy looked up at me, her expression unreadable, before stepping back. Janice's smile quickly faded, and she started to apologize. "Sorry, JW," Janice said softly. "Stop, Janice," I replied, shaking my head. "All I was doing was pointing to the flight service." "Oh, really?" Janice teased, her mood shifting. "Yes, really," I said firmly. Janice raised an eyebrow. "Then you weren't about to kiss Lucy?" No," I stammered, feeling cornered. "I was just standing close." "And your heads were inches apart," Janice pressed. "You both know you were about to kiss." "Janice, stop," Lucy interjected, her voice calm but insistent. "JW was just being nice." Janice wasn't convinced. "You two were at each other's throats last time," she reminded us. "Then, when you got back to LA, Lucy, you were complaining nonstop. You even started researching Alaska, specifically JW. You both clearly like each other more than you admit." I shifted uncomfortably, trying to leave the conversation, but Emma's voice cut through, stopping me in my tracks. "JW," Emma said firmly, "you need to explain yourself to this young lady." Trapped, I turned back to Lucy, who was watching me with a mix of fear and hope in her eyes. Lucy." I hesitated, unsure of what to say. I wanted to find the right words, but nothing came. Lucy stepped closer, her gaze locked on mine. "Yes, JW," she asked softly, batting her eyelashes in a way that left me utterly lost. "I'd like it if you came to the cabin this Saturday," I blurted out before I could stop myself. Her face lit up. "I'd love to," she replied quickly. "Janice and Paul have been talking about your place since last fall. We've missed it." "You were only there a few days," I pointed out, feeling awkward. "But you took care of us," Lucy said, her voice softening. "You saved us." "I was just in the right place at the right time," I insisted, trying to downplay it. "And you helped," she continued, stepping even closer. "Yeah, I helped," I muttered, my heart racing. "And I owe you for that," she added, her eyes never leaving mine. "No, you don't," I said, shaking my head. She moved even closer, our faces now inches apart. I could feel her warm breath, and for a moment I didn't want that feeling to end. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're welcome," I replied softly. In that moment, her lips met mine, and without thinking, my arms wrapped around her instinctively. She kissed me passionately, holding on tight, and I found myself kissing her back. Suddenly, I felt a presence beside me. Janice was inches away, grinning. "Hey, you two, my turn next." Blushing, we pulled apart. Janice stepped in, kissed me lightly, then smiled at us both. "I'm hurt. You won't love me like you do the fair Lucy," she said theatrically. "Janice," Lucy said, sounding annoyed. Trying to lighten things up, I said, "Janice is right. We shouldn't have kissed. We don't really know each other that well." "Oh, JW," Janice cut in. "You have a lot to learn about Miss Lucy. She's been digging up info on you all winter." Lucy blushed, looking a bit frightened. "She's entitled to find out whatever she wants about me," I said. "I'm not hiding anything." "Oh, how about your feelings for one particular lady?" Janice shot back. "Janice, you come on strong when you want to," I replied. "You're not ready for how much Lucy is focused on you," Janice continued. "I think you need to be warned." "Janice!" Lucy nearly shouted on the verge of tears. I felt for her. I was the center of her interest, and it made me blush too. I turned to Lucy. "Look, I think I like you more than a little. I'd like to get to know you better, but I'm just me. What you see is what you get." Emma and Jacob were beaming. I felt like this was all happening too fast and in the wrong place. Backing away, I said, "I'm not one to discuss personal matters in public. If you want to come out, the door's open. Use the flight service if you want to save time. I've got to go." As I walked down the dock, I glanced back. Lucy and Janice were arguing on the porch, while Emma and Jacob stood there smiling, waving at me. They'd never waved at me like that before. I almost missed seeing Amber as I stepped onto my boat. She was coming out of the store. I hadn't seen her inside, so I wondered, where was she during all that? The whole incident felt like grade school. Do you like her? She likes you. I didn't like it then, and I wasn't a fan now. Despite missing Lucy, I hoped she'd get too busy to come back. I didn't want complications, and I could tell being part of her life would be just that. Saturday morning, I heard the float plane approaching. It banked hard, then descended toward my dock. It was Joe himself flying, even though he was in his 70s. I wondered why he took this flight instead of one of his other pilots. As he docked, I grabbed the line and tied it off. Janice stepped out of the plane first, followed by Paul and then Lucy. Lucy looked around nervously until her eyes landed on me. Her face lit up and she started walking toward me. As she got closer, she broke into a run, throwing her arms around me and hugging me tightly. She kissed my cheek, and before I knew it, that kiss turned into a passionate one. Joe, standing nearby, cleared his throat. When should I pick you up tomorrow?" he asked. Janice smiled over at him. 4 p.m. will work." "Okay," Joe nodded. "Bringing back any fish or game?" Janice chuckled. "I doubt it. Maybe just Lucy and her big old bear," she teased. "Janice, stop it," Lucy said, stamping her foot in protest. "No, Joe, just us." Joe nodded again, then untied the plane and climbed aboard. "See you all tomorrow. Take care," he called out, waving as the plane taxied out and lifted into the sky. We all stood watching as it banked and headed back. Paul turned to me, offering his hand. "Glad to finally meet you standing up," he said with a grin. "Thanks for saving my life last winter." "You're welcome," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Come on up. I'll grab your suitcases, Lucy." Lucy shook her head. "I can carry my own stuff, thanks." Paul interjected, giving Lucy a teasing look. "Let him help, Lucy. You argue more than any woman I know." Lucy blushed slightly, then handed me the larger suitcase without further protest. Janice laughed. "Paul, you should have been up and about back then. You could have quieted them both faster than I ever did." "Janice," Lucy snapped, her frustration clear. "Don't make me forget how long we've been friends." "Oh, relax, Lucy. I'm just teasing," Janice replied, a mischievous smile on her face. Then turning to me, she added, "By the way, mind if I kiss your boyfriend to thank him, like you did?" "He's not my boyfriend," Lucy exclaimed, struggling to keep her composure. "I was just glad to see him, that's all." "Great," Janice said with a grin. "Then you won't mind if I do this." Before Lucy could respond, Janice stepped forward, hugged me tightly, and kissed me on the lips. The kiss lingered longer than I expected. Startled, I let go of the suitcase and hugged her back before gently pulling away. I saw a look in Lucy's eyes that hinted at jealousy. I wondered briefly why, but the moment passed as we headed up the path to my cabin. "You girls can take the big bed. Paul, you get the other bed in there. I'll sleep on the couch." I pointed out the rooms, knowing Lucy and Janice already knew the layout. "We don't want to put you out, JW, Paul said. "I can take the couch." "No, take the bed, Paul. It's no problem. I sleep on the couch most nights anyway." I didn't catch the look Lucy and Janice exchanged. It wasn't until later that I realized how much I'd given away with that statement. Sometimes, what seems innocent reveals more than intended. We spent the morning catching up since the crash. I noticed Paul and Janice seemed close, almost like they wanted to kiss, but held back. Meanwhile, Lucy seemed unaware of their tension, which made me wonder. After lunch, I gave them a tour of the property. The last spot was The Point, a flat, clear area at the highest part of my land with an incredible view. It always took my breath away. "Why didn't you build your cabin here?" Paul asked. "The view is amazing." "Building here would ruin this place," I might put a bench near that Sitka spruce someday, but nothing else. It's perfect for meditation, I replied. Meditation? You? Lucy looked surprised. Yeah, I meditate when I can. This spot calms me, I said, smiling to show I wasn't offended. You keep surprising me, JW, she replied. Oh, look, I have cell service. I can make calls or get messages here. Don't count on it. Reception is spotty at best, I said. She looked disappointed, focusing more on cell service than the view. As we headed back, I noticed a small skiff approaching the dock. It was rare to have visitors, so I was curious. Lucy took my arm. You know, we could put a cell tower up here and get reliable service. Why would I want a cell tower messing up the view? I don't need that kind of technology here, I snapped. She looked stunned, and it wasn't until we were near the cabin that I realized she'd said, we could put in a tower. It made me rethink what kind of relationship she was imagining. The person from the skiff was walking up the trail. When they got closer, I saw it was Amber carrying 2 large salmon. Hey, JW, thought you might like some fresh salmon. Just caught these an hour ago, she said, glancing at Lucy and the others. Oh, you have company. Thanks, Amber. We could have a salmon bake if you'd like to stay, I asked, curious, since this was the first time Amber had shown up alone. That sounds good. I don't want to intrude, though. You're not intruding, Lucy cut in, taking my arm. Amber, right? I'm Lucy. This is Janice and Paul. We're just visiting for a couple of days. JW invited us. Amber stayed cool, though I caught a spark in her eyes as Lucy linked arms with me. I began to rethink my invitation, but it was too late. Amber was already inside the cabin. Lucy tightened her grip on my arm. Janice looked like she was barely holding back laughter, while Paul just smiled at me. I was starting to regret having company. Inside, Amber went straight to the sink. Got a fillet knife? I'll get these ready for baking, she said, flopping the salmon onto the counter. I handed her the knife and stepped back. Lucy, Janice, and Paul watched as Amber expertly filleted the salmon, leaving the skin and guts in one piece. Both salmon were done in just minutes. I noticed all 3 of them had a yuck look on their faces. Amber finished, and there was a brief silence before I spoke up. Amber worked at the canneries in high school. She's had a lot of practice. Lucy stared at Amber, then at me with a look I couldn't read. Janice had a similar expression, while Paul struggled not to laugh. Amber looked at me with an oddly personal gaze. The silence grew awkward. So, how about I get the grill going? Paul, can you help me? I asked. Paul nodded, and we stepped onto the back deck. The women stayed inside, talking. Looks like you've got your hands full, Paul said. Yeah, I'm not sure what to do, I admitted. Well, you have 3 choices. Go after Lucy, pursue Amber, who seems already hooked, or get on your boat and take off, he said. He nailed it. All 3 options had crossed my mind. What would you do? I asked. If I weren't into Janice, I'd go for Lucy. She's changed a lot since last summer, and you're a big part of that. But if I were you, I'd probably choose Amber. She's used to this lifestyle and seems level-headed. In other words, I'm on my own, I sighed, lighting the grill. Yep, it's up to you, partner, but you might need to act soon, he said with a knowing smile. That boat is looking pretty tempting, I muttered. Paul laughed. He was a solid guy who knew I had to work things out myself. The day had opened my eyes. I had to decide who I really needed in my life. The hard part was knowing someone would get hurt. For a moment, I seriously considered Paul's 3rd option. Could I make it to the boat without being caught? Dinner quickly turned into a verbal duel. It started with Lucy's question to Amber. So, Amber, are you planning on going to college this fall? Amber glanced up before replying. Probably not. My dad's a guide, and I'll likely join the family business, she answered with a smile. I'm sure taking some business classes could help with that, Lucy suggested, clearly probing. The University of Alaska offers online courses, and I'm already taking some. Besides, my man lives nearby, and I want to stay close, Amber replied, glancing at me. Paul and Janice exchanged amused looks, ready to laugh. It was clear both women had a common focus. Me. Getting out and seeing the world could be good for you, honey, Lucy pressed on. You might find better opportunities. Amber's gaze turned icy. I've seen the world, honey, and I know what and who I want in it. Her tone was dripping with sarcasm. Lucy kept pushing. But a girl your age could learn so much by going to a university. Why limit yourself to this small place? Amber's eyes locked onto mine. We both know we want JW. I'm not leaving just so you can swoop in. I love him just as he is. I was stunned. I hadn't expected Amber to make such a bold declaration. Janice and Paul shifted in their seats, bracing for a possible confrontation. Lucy took a deep breath. I'm closer to JW's age, and I can give him a more stable life. I'd do a lot for him. Amber's expression hardened. You'd probably try to change him, build a mansion here, and leave him alone while you're off filming. And you'd plan kids into a strict schedule, with nannies to raise them. Each word was like a dagger aimed at Lucy's lifestyle. Lucy's face flushed with anger. I have a career that requires planning. I make my money by being present, not hiding away in some backwoods place. Janice quickly stood and dragged Lucy outside. Paul glanced at me, the humor gone from his eyes. He silently followed them outside, leaving me alone with Amber. Amber turned to me, regret on her face. I'm sorry, JW. I didn't mean to upset her, but I had to stand my ground. I think I should go now. In that moment, everything clicked. I realized why I'd felt uneasy about Lucy. Her career would always come first, and I'd always be second. Amber, on the other hand, was ready to put me first. But she didn't know that I was already in love with her. I loved Amber. Amber got up to leave, and I followed. I pulled her into my arms, and her tears began to fall. I'm so sorry, JW, Amber sobbed, her voice breaking. I always mess things up when I'm close to you. I just love you so much. I gently kissed her on the top of her head. Go clean up. We need to talk, I said softly, guiding her toward the bathroom. Once she was inside, I stepped outside and found Lucy and Janice deep in conversation. As I approached, Janice stepped aside, sensing the tension. Lucy, we need to talk, I said quietly. Lucy nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I know, she whispered. You and I won't work. I do love you, but I can't walk away from my career. It comes first. We should call Joe and leave today. I pulled her into a gentle hug. She kissed me softly, the kiss carrying the weight of goodbye, more like a farewell between friends than lovers. After a moment, Lucy and Janice walked away together to find Paul. As they left, I turned to see Amber standing in the doorway, looking sad and uncertain. I motioned for her to come closer. Your parents know you're here? I asked gently. Yeah, she said, nodding. I told Mom I was going fishing. It's late to go back by boat, I pointed out. Do you want to fly back with Lucy, Janice, and Paul? Amber's head snapped up, her eyes filled with fear and reluctance. No, she said hesitantly. I'd rather stay. Amber, I said, my tone soft but serious. Do you know why Lucy is leaving today? She shook her head. No. It's because we both realized that we wouldn't work out, I explained. Her eyes dropped to the ground and I could see her confusion. I took a deep breath. And I realized I loved someone else. Her eyes widened in surprise. Who? You, I said, my voice steady. I love you, Amber. Without hesitation, she leapt into my arms, covering my face in kisses. I love you, JW, she whispered, her voice filled with joy. We saw Lucy, Janice, and Paul off. There were no hard feelings, just the acceptance of what wouldn't be. After they left, I turned to Amber. Think you should call your parents and let them know where you're staying tonight? I asked, curious about how she'd handle it. Amber made the call. I heard her tell her mom she'd be spending the night with me. Her mom's response was something I'd never forget. Well, it's about damn time.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
We have all heard the cliches. Good things happen to those who do good things. Play it forward. Bread cast upon the waters comes back tenfold. God does not always pay on Sundays, etc. Bullshit. Life is more like no good deed goes unpunished. Of course, that was not my thought when a grungy biker-looking guy approached me late one night as I was putting the nozzle away from a well-worn pickup truck after filling up with gas. Hey buddy, can you help a scrambler out? He asked, looking around. Now I can see why this guy thought I was biker. I had a skull and crossbones bandana wrapped around my head, which supported mirrored sunglasses. A scraggy beard matched the dark splotches on my oil-splattered torn jeans. Add in my 6'4" frame's not-so-insignificant belly, which a leather vest and dirty Harley-Davidson t-shirt did not do a good job of hiding, and I looked like the stereotypical biker. However, looks can be deceiving, as I was a complete poser. Not only could I barely ride a tricycle, I had trouble with any car not equipped with an automatic transmission. I was at this gas station only to fill up my dad's truck after returning from a costume party at his house. But what the hell? My wife was staying overnight at my dad's cleaning up with the kids. Why not live out my fantasy a little longer? What you need, pal? I said, as I put away a massive billfold, complete with chain I had purchased last week at a flea market. The biker looked around nervously before speaking. I must have been doing a ton when I and the cruiser ate some pavement back there. He pointed out to the darkness beyond the gas station. Jammed the fork in a damn pothole and got me some road rash doing an OTB. Took me forever to hoof it here. This guy was quite the chatterbox, but I had no idea what he was saying, so I kept quiet. I need your chase here. He pounded on the side of my truck to scoop up my ride and ferry me back to the house. The biker pulled a wad of cash out of his pocket. I can get more at the compound from the club if you need. Put that away, I said, as I waved at the money in Chatterbox's hand. I was having an internal debate. This was a chance to see the inside of a real motorcycle hangout. That beat my day job of moving numbers around on a spreadsheet any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I tried to act calm as I scratched at my beard that took me 2 months to grow for the costume party. Get in, I grunted to my Chatterbox biker. Chatterbox stopped talking for a second as he smiled and opened the passenger door. The twins rushed into the house the next morning, making me spill my coffee, with only the energy 3-year-old boys can have. Daddy, look what Grandpa gave us. They were still wearing their Batman costumes from the night before, but both wielding plastic baseball bats. My wife trailed in after them. Boys, go change now, then you can go outside and play. The kids ran to their rooms, whacking each other with the baseball bats as they scurried down the hallway. How was Dad? I asked, and as I poured her a cup of coffee, and shrugged as she sat down. Your dad was happy to see the boys. Dad and had never clicked, although and had a good steady job as an admin assistant. Dad was not overjoyed when I told him I was going to marry Ann. Randall, Dad had said, why are you settling for such a plain, dull, boring woman? The only reason I can see and agreeing to marry you is you are the best she can get right now. Dad and loves me, and I love her. We have the same interests, goals, desires, and values. Why do you want to piss on my parade? Dad just waved his hand. Blah, you'll both lead dreary, dull lives, until one day one of you will start wanting something better. Damn, son, live a little. Go get drunk, screw some strange, howl at the moon. Otherwise, you are going to be saddled with 2.5 kids plus a house with a mortgage, working 9 to 5 as some drone. Do you want your life's highlight to be planning a 2-week vacation to Disney World or the Grand Canyon? That kind of dismal existence is not living, just waiting to die. Dad did not convince me to drop in, and truth be told, we did both work 9 to 5 jobs for the county, and we did look forward to taking the twins to Disney World. I did not think it was boring and seemed to enjoy our life. Of course, we had always lived that way, so how would we know the difference? Ann's words brought me back to the present. Your dad seemed to enjoy the party. It is the first time since your mom died that he even said something nice to me. I feigned shock, putting my hand over my heart. Dad gave you a compliment? And looked shyly over the rim of her coffee cup. Yup, he liked my Catwoman costume. Said he would love to see me climb a wall. I laughed as and continued. Your dad wants his truck back right away. You know how he hates it when he has to drive your Prius hybrid. I smirked. Dad never was exactly a father knows best TV show kind of dad. His bedtime stories were along the lines of, and all the kids cleaned their room, got Dad a beer, and went straight to bed, the E&D. Now it was Ann's turn to laugh as I leaned back in my chair. But Ann, let me tell you about my little adventure with Dad's truck last night. Ann sat mesmerized as I retold what happened. When I finished, she could not stop asking questions. Finally, she ran out of queries. Randall, you were really at a motorcycle clubhouse? I am a little angry with you. What if something happened? I have seen Sons of Anarchy on Netflix. I waved my hand at her. It was fine. They kept trying to get me to go to the back room with a girl. I saw Ann's face get red, so I quickly added, of course I didn't. Said I was recovering from a STD. Chatterbox, the guy I helped out last night, kept pushing beers on me. You don't drink. Sure, Ann, Randall the accountant does not drink, but Randall the outlaw biker can handle a beer or two. But look what party gift my new BFF gave me. And watched as I pulled a little cellophane bag out of my shirt pocket. Randall, what is that? Damn, and I thought you were the TV series Breaking Bad biggest fan. I think it is crystal meth. At least it looks like crystal meth. You are not going to try it, are you? And said, looking toward the hallway where the twins continued whacking each other with the plastic bats. Nah, I'll turn it over to the sheriff on Monday. I scratched my beard. That reminds me, I got to shave this thing. And ran a hand over my face. Why don't you wait on that? The boys are busy. Let's go into the bedroom, and you can show me how an outlaw biker treats his old lady. I turned over the small bag to the sheriff, who was an old friend from high school, along with my biker tail on Monday. On Friday, he called me into his office. I still had my beard, and had really gotten into the whole outlaw biker and old lady role-playing. Who was I to argue? If it got me this much sex, I would be Superman and pretend to fly, even though I can't even swim. The sheriff had another man in his office. The guy had government written all over him. He was DEA and got right to the point. That dope you got is high-quality stuff we think is coming from somewhere north, maybe out of Canada. We have never been able to establish a logistics route. Think you can help us out and make some introductions? I could not help stifle my laugh. You can't be serious. Last weekend was a freak occurrence. Do not let the beard fool you. I move numbers around for a living, not drugs. You must have undercover guys for this kind of stuff. Oh, we do. Real good guys, too. DEA continued. But we need someone to make introductions. As a CI or confidential informant, you can do and say a lot more than a law enforcement officer. We just need a contact. The sheriff broke in. Randall, think of it as an acting role, like the plays in high school. You know, all the world's a stage kind of thing. I had done some walk-on parts in high school, college, and even at the local community theater. There was always a role for the big dumb guy. But this was a whole different ballgame. I looked at both of them in amazement. Sure, all the world's a stage, and everyone is under-rehearsed and unprepared. Somehow I don't think being an elf in the school Christmas pageant is the same as pretending to be a meth-dealing biker. DEA spoke up. Don't worry, we will be behind you all the way. Oh yeah? How far behind me? DEA ignored my comment. You know how to get in touch with the guy? I pointed a finger at my head. I do numbers for a living, remember? I got it right here. 9 months later, the large banquet hall was filled to capacity for the celebration. It was an alphabet of law enforcement agencies, DEA, ATF, FBI, IRS, DHS, even the RCMP, along with the state troopers and a dozen county sheriff's offices. They were all celebrating the end of Operation Great White, which had netted over 100 arrests and rolled up one of the West's biggest transportation, shipping, and distribution meth operations. Me? I was celebrating the end of my not-so-consensual undercover CI role. No matter how many times I tried to get out, I was always being drawn back into the operation. The last 8 months I had been moved to a different location to help with establishments of other agents' cover and my family's safety. I had never been separated from my wife and son so long, and was not happy about it. Now I was sitting at a table, with my wife and father accepting constant congratulations from the fellows around the room. My dad kept telling me how proud he was of me. Of course, he was half-sloshed from the open bar, and was also looking pretty tipsy after more than a few glasses of champagne. My dad had his arm around my shoulder. Goddamn, Randall, my son. You are a real man after all. I couldn't believe it when that government attorney guy showed up and said the cops needed your help. I tried not to breath in my dad's booze breath. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate you looking after and in the boys for me. I know it must have been difficult. Dad grabbed, and with his other arm, so abruptly she spilled her drink. No worries. He slurred. Me and your bride got along fine. In fact, we missed you. And broke in, moving out of Dad's grasp and giving me a hug. I missed you. The boys missed you. I wish you did not have to have been away so long. Suddenly a screeching feedback filled the room as a tall, handsome man tried to speak into a podium mic. He was the federal attorney who was given the task of overseeing Operation Great White when its scope became apparent. Let T-Bone, the next governor, speak. A drunk voice yelled out from the crowd. The tall man at the mic just smiled and waved at the assembled lawmen. I had been filled in by lots of the cops about him. From a wealthy, well-connected political family on the coast, William T. Boone, or T-Bone, had been an undergrad at Stanford, done law school at Harvard, and after a stint in the military, Jack was punching his ticket with the U.S. Attorney's Office to groom him for a future governor race. As T-Bone droned on about what a great day this has for law-abiding citizens, and how much safer the nation was, his pride, etc. I kept looking into Ann's eyes. She winked at me and crept her hand under the table to stroke my groin. My shock must have been evident on my face as Ann smiled and sped up her movements. I glanced at my watch, wondering if we could slip away unnoticed. We were unable to slip away, and had to wait until the end of the entire event. Fortunately, a Nicetown car had been provided for us. Dad was well-oiled, repeating himself to the driver about his big, bad undercover son, and was beyond tipsy and never took her eyes off me, holding on to my hand in a death grip. I was feeling no pain either and wished the driver would hurry to my home. I do not recall how I ended up in the living room alone, but remember my youngest boy shaking me awake. "Whoa, son, what are you doing up so late?" I asked in a stupor, taking him into my arms. GBA and Mom are making lots of noise in the room and woke me up. The boys each had their own rooms, but had moved in together so my dad could take one of their rooms and stay with, and when I got moved to the undercover house, I carried my groggy son, stumbling up the stairs and putting him in bed. I then staggered to the room my dad was staying in and opened the door. At first, my brain refused to register the image sent from my pupils. I rubbed my eyes thinking it was a side effect of the booze I had consumed earlier. The curtain in the window was open. It was a full moon. The light was so bright you could have read a newspaper by it. However, now the moonlight was illuminating my naked wife and astride my equally naked father, doing her best cowgirl riding a bronco impression. I had the strangest thought that they had not even turned down the covers, as the bedspread Disney cartoon characters seemed to animate and mock me while and my father thrust together. I shook my head violently, then bit the inside of my cheek. The sharp pain in my mouth told me I was awake. I do not know how long I stood frozen in place, but the changing pitch of Anne's moaning snapped me out of my stupor, as I knew that sound signaled the start of her orgasm. I reached out and yanked and off my father, throwing her to the floor. Dad must have been on the verge also, as his semen spurted all over the main Disney character from Aladdin. I picked up my son's small, colored Playskool desk and slammed the lightweight plastic furniture onto the form in the bed as my wife scrambled on her hands and knees to the wall. Slamming the door behind me, I strode to the hall closet and pulled down the top shelf, scattering everything, until I found what I was looking for. The bedroom door opened, and my wife and dad peeked out. A Lion King sheet they were holding partially hid their nakedness. Both slammed the door closed when I spun around, pointing my grandfather's Korean War-era Colt Model M1911A.45 pistol at them. In 2 steps I reached the bedroom door, and in 1 move kicked it open, and my dad were cowering against the far wall. "Randall, wait," and pleaded. "Son, you don't understand." My dad started, his forehead bleeding from the encounter with the Playskool desk. I racked the slide on the .45 pistol and pointed it at my dad. I heard a noise and looked down to see him pissing on himself. "No, Randall." "No," screamed Anne. I whipped the gun in her direction, then in my father's direction, back and forth, my mind a fog. I started to squeeze the trigger, but at the last second jerked the gun upward and a shot fired into the ceiling. No one moved as the gunshot echo faded, then a small voice stopped me cold. "Daddy, I can't sleep." Turning around, I saw my son was standing in the doorway, clutching his teddy bear. Everything froze in time, but the fog in my mind cleared. I motioned with the gun barrel at my dad and wife. "Get out," I rasped. "Take the boys, leave the house," and scrambled past me, gathering up my son as she left the room. My dad was siding around the edge of the wall toward the door. "Son, I know this." He started before I backhanded him, the pistol barrel striking him in the face, knocking him out the door. I sat on the bed and put my head between my knees. It was very awkward at the police station. Yesterday, I was part of the law enforcement fraternity. While not an officer, I had put myself on the line, and many of the real, undercover cops had given what I thought were overblown exaggerations of my exploits to help them in Operation Great White. Also, there was the fact the county lockup was overcrowded with arrests from the raids. I was dead meat if they put me anywhere near the current holding cells. I was placed in a room normally used to hold low-risk juveniles with a bed and even a TV. The next morning, the sheriff brought me a takeout meal and more bad news. "Randall, I don't know what to say, so I will give it to you straight. It looks bad. Your wife has obtained a restraining order against you. Somewhat behind the ears, say, who doesn't understand, filed a bunch of charges already." He rubbed his neck. "The paperwork seems to have been, misplaced for the time being." I looked at him, but said nothing. "Randall, your wife is in my office now." I snorted as he continued. "If I let her in here, you promise to behave?" "I mean, I got to be here, but I will stand over there in the corner and let you two have your say." I took a deep breath. "I appreciate all you're doing, but there is not much to say. But I guess I do not have a lot of control now over what you're going to do, right?" The sheriff cracked a smile. "Well, it is my jail." He walked over and banged on the door twice. We sat in silence for a few minutes until a deputy opened the door and my wife and stepped in. The sheriff stood up, offering in his chair as he moved to the far corner of the room behind her, and looked a mess as she tentatively sat on the offered chair about a yard from me. Randall, I do not know what to say. How about, I have restraining order against you, so you, even though you have not seen your sons for 8 months, I can't see them anymore because I want to screw your old man. I saw the sheriff's eyes open wide at my statement and then pulled a tissue from her purse. It was not like that, Randall. Your dad is in the hospital, you know. After the event at the house, he had chest pains and they called an ambulance. I do not give a shit where your stupid buddy is at. All I care about is where are my children now? They're at the house. A friend is staying with them. Another one of your relatives? How deliverance of you. Is this some first cousin you are screwing, or an uncle? She is a friend from work, and not related. I leaned back in my chair. I didn't know you swung both ways, but I guess there is a lot I didn't know. Randall, stop this. It is not helping. Oh, I am sorry, and it's my first time dealing with incest, not to mention a cheating wife, and having my children kept from me. I'll need your guidance in this area. Your father and I are not blood related. I will get the restraining order dropped. I told the ASA I'll refuse to testify against you about anything. I was scared. You pointed a gun at me. My apologies, and I was unsure of the rules of etiquette when you come across your wife screwing her father-in-law. Randall, you must let me explain. I know you have it in you to forgive me. I swear to God nothing like this will ever happen again. Now I was starting to get pissed. And even the devil believes in God. Why should I want to forgive you or believe you? Because we belong together. You can search the far corners of the globe and never find a mate like me. Well, thank God the world is round, so your inbred ass can stay in some skanky dark corner where you belong. What else you got? I can't imagine how upset you were, Randall, so I will give you some time to digest all this. But please understand it was never planned. I just missed you so much. I was so lonely, and your dad suddenly became nice to me. It was like he was a different person when he found out you were working undercover. He was busting his buttons trying to keep the secret. She wiped her eyes. We would sit around the table after the twins had gone to bed a lot of evenings. He had his beer and me with a few glasses of wine. Please do not go with the booze made me do it. I won't insult you by saying that. It is just your dad. He is not my dad anymore. And looked at me shocked before continuing. Well, he started talking about your mom and the good times they had. This made me miss you even more. One night we were trading funny, blue stories like the time the kids almost caught us having sex in the shower. He told some torrid stories about your mom back in their younger days. Suddenly he got so sad. And you know how I am after a few glasses of wine, next thing you know. I held up my hand to stop her. Sheriff, I said, looking at him. Can I borrow 2 of your pens, please? The sheriff looked at me suspiciously. Why do you want 2 of my pens? So, I can poke my eardrums out before this, which starts giving me details about screwing my mom's husband. And's face got beet red. I was not going to go into details, Randall. I just wanted to say how it started and how aghast I was in the morning, give you some context. Great, I said, throwing my hands up. Screw him once, screw him every day. What's the difference, right? Now and started to get upset. It was not like that. I stayed away from him, even considered asking him to move back to his house. But that would have just hurt the twins. They were already acting out because you were gone. Then 2 weeks later, I was having a real shitty day. I had not heard from you in a week. I was depressed. Work was terrible, and the twins were acting their age. Everything was just a mess. I broke down crying that evening, and he was just so understanding. It wasn't for the sex, it was for the I don't know, comfort. I couldn't sit still any longer and popped up. The sheriff took a step, but I did not move toward and comfort? You were screwing him for comfort? What? And there was no cookie dough ice cream in the house. I sat back down. And the night of my triumphant return? Was that the final big bang? One more screw for old time's sake. And at least looked embarrassed. That was a mistake. She saw my face and backtracked. They were all mistakes, but that last one was the most stupid. I was so happy and horny you were back. Plus I really had a lot to drink. You're duh. He talked me into it one last time, just for closure, he said. He would not let me leave the room, kept pestering me. You were passed out on the sofa downstairs. My booze mind told me one more time would not matter. So for the first time in 8 months I was going to get to make love to my wife, but you were going to give me his sloppy seconds? God, I think I am going to hurl. Tears started to form in And's eyes. I swear that is not what I was thinking. I was not even thinking that far ahead. At most I thought you were out for the count and I could bathe later. Be all fresh and ready for you in the morning. We would make a whole day catching up. I took a deep breath. And you do know this means divorce. I cannot live with what you did to me. I know it is going to be tough on the kids, but I cannot live with you after that. I may not be some He-Man Rambo, but I do have some self-respect. She turned toward me. Randall, do you just want me to just crawl into a hole someplace? Is that it? Go away and suffer a slow and painful death. No, Anne. I replied. I do not wish you a slow and painful death, something quick, perhaps like an airplane crash. There was shock in her face. I already have a suit picked out for your funeral. However, if you want me to speak at the burial, don't expect any kind words at your parting. This time, and jumped up and ran to the exit. The sheriff pounded twice, and she escaped when the deputy opened the door. I was held for another day, as no one knew what to do with me. I alternated between depression and resignation. A steady stream of cops, both undercover and otherwise I had worked with, stopped in to commiserate. Most all had been divorced at least once. I guess it goes with the territory. Few had kind words about their ex-wives, and I heard plenty of horror stories about divorce court. I guess their advice can best be summed up as bitches be crazy. On the third day, I was escorted by two men who had government written all over them to a huge suite in the downtown hotel. I was surprised to see in the middle of the suite, taking on a cell phone in front of window overlooking the city, T-Bone, the federal district attorney that was oversaw Operation Great White and was overseeing the federal court case against a lot of the major players. He waved me to a plush chair where a silver coffee service was laid out. I was pouring myself a cup of coffee when T-Bone ended his call and took a seat across from me. What the hell is this Jerry Springer shit you got going on? I did not need this kind of sideshow screwing up the biggest case in my career. T-Bone may be a federal attorney, but I was past caring. What was he going to do? Throw me in jail? Take my kids away from me? Gee, T-Bone, I am sorry my wife having an affair and screwing my own father is interfering with your political career. I will ask the 304 to take more care with her partners in the future so as to not inconvenience you. T-Bone got a shocked look on his face, then broke into a laugh. You do got a big set of balls on you, don't you? He picked up a coffee cup. But I should have known that after reading the reports of some of the stuff you pulled during this operation. I kept drinking my coffee. We need this to go away, Randall. I leaned pretty heavy on the state attorney to withhold the charges that Dipwad's office had pending. That office has a major federal grant in the pipe, and he does not want me holding it up. There is a lot of heavy lifting coming up, and I need you as one of my star witnesses to have his head in the game. What do I need to do to make you happy? Easy. First, I want to see my kids, like yesterday. T-Bone nodded as he tapped something on a PC table. And get me a divorce from that inborn slut of a wife. Whoa, Randall. You sure you want to get rid of the women over a little bedroom antics? I looked at him like he was crazy. T-Bone, that women, and screwed my own father in my son's bedroom. T-Bone just shrugged. So? My dad has a string of mistresses around the world. My mom is screwing every pool boy and tennis pro of legal age. They are going to be married 30 years next June. The important thing is they are there for each other when it is needed. Marriage is all about appearances and what your spouse can do for you. It's not the Middle Ages. You don't own each other's bodies. I shook my head. Maybe in your crowd, but I take forsaking all others seriously. T-Bone leaned back. What about till death do us part? Or for better or worse, you recall those portions of your marriage contract? I put down my cup. Well, I don't want you to kill her. T-Bone slapped me on the shoulder and laughed. You would have made a good lawyer, always looking for the loopholes. Let me set up a meeting and see what I can do. T-Bone was true to his word about getting me to see my kids, even if and was not, as the restraining order was still in place. However, having U.S. federal marshals pick up and watch over the children while they were visiting me reinforced her objections of the danger I would pose. I was still barred from my house, but T-Bone took care of that too. Randall, this 3-bedroom suite is all yours. Order anything you want from clothes to a bunch of call girls. As we like to say in government service, nothing is too good when it's someone else's money. I looked around the huge suite. Thanks T-Bone, but I do not need 3 bedrooms. T-Bone waved his hand. Well, 2 of the bedrooms are for the U.S. Marshals keeping you company. You pissed off some mighty violent people. I need to keep you safe. This would not have anything to do with keeping me away from and out of jail, would it? T-Bone gave me what looked like a campaign smile. Now you see the big picture, you understand. We aren't dealing with the Planet of Apes here. Just let me try to take care of it, okay? A week later, we were seated in a massive conference room at some law office T-Bone was pals with, and tried to sit next to me, but I got up and moved to the other side of the table. T-Bone looked irritated at my maneuver. Okay, can we stop the musical chairs now? T-Bone said, clapping his hands. The purpose of this little get-together is how do we make all parties involved whole? And spoke up. I never wanted any of this. I just want Randall to come home and forget everything so we can start over, pretend it never happened. Randall, T-Bone said, and all eyes turned to me. Not going to happen. That is like saying if dinosaurs had spaceships they would still be around today. And looked at me. Don't start. There is hope for us still. Hope is a sign of foolishness. My life is over here. I cannot stay in this town any longer. I have to quit my job, move, start over. T-Bone tapped the table. Well, good. Finally some place I can help you both out here. Randall, and I can have you placed in WITSEC, the Witness Security Program run by the U.S. Marshals, more commonly known as the Witness Protection Program. You both get new identities, jobs, a complete clean slate. Like one big do-over. And was having none of that. I am not uprooting my whole family. I have lived in this place my entire life. All my friends are here, my hairdresser, my OBGYN. I just can't pack up and start over. T-Bone did his best and tried to allay his fears. I assure you there are many fine stylists and competent medical professionals in other parts of the county. The U.S. Marshals have a great program to get you set up, complete with everything from dentist to daycare. Everything will be okay in the end. And what if it's not okay? And said, crossing her arms. T-Bone shrugged. Then it is not the end yet. T-Bone's cell phone rang. He looked at the number and scowled. Excuse me, I need to take this. And he walked to a corner of the room turning his back. And looked at me. Randall, we need to end this charade. I admit I screwed up big time. But you need to take some responsibility too. If you had been thinking of your family and not gone off playing Serpico, we would never be in this mess. And held up her hand when I tried to speak. And yes, Randall, I accept a major part of the fault for what happened. But look at you, all you can think of is yourself. The hospital called, your dad is asking for you. Have you even seen him? Yes, and I see you and him screwing in my son's room on the Aladdin bedspread every time I close my eyes. I may never watch another Disney cartoon ever again. And gritted her teeth. I know I made a mistake, but I am only human. I have given you time to get over it. Now it is time to pull up your big boy pants and let us get on with our life. So that's your solution? You pull down your big girl pants to screw your kid's grandfather, and I need to get over it? I didn't say it would be easy. Go do what you have to do to make it right in your mind. Go screw a bunch of women if you think it would make us even. So I can give your sister a call? Anne's face registered shock. You wouldn't. I knew I had gotten to her now. And sister was the complete opposite of Anne. A tall, sexy, curvy babe and a megawatt smile with an outgoing personality to match that had guys buzzing around her since puberty. The family joke was Anne had got the brains and her sister the beauty, and was extremely insecure when it came to her sister. Sure, Anne, why not? She always liked me. That was kinda true. In reality, Anne's sister like all guys and was always up for a good time. My sister is off limits. And stuttered. What? You want me to screw your mother? You're sick. She is old enough to be your mother. Really? You banged a guy, many times I may add, that was old enough to be your kid's grandfather. It was not that often, Randall. Don't make it more than it was. And the only place screwing your relatives' kind of behavior is normal is on the Jerry Springer show. I said I was sorry. What more do you want? I want to divorce your inbred, white trash, trailer park, hillbilly, 304 bum. God damn it, Randall. I am the mother of your children, not any of those things. Really? What do you call it when someone screws their relatives? A mistake. A single stupid error in judgment, never to be repeated. I am not going to wait forever, Randall, and I am not going to pay for it for the rest of my life because your ego can't take a little hit. You divorce me, and I will do everything in my power to keep your kids from you. I don't care who your big shot friends are. She pointed at T-Bone talking in the corner. It will be like sandpaper. I will use every means to wear you down. Just then T-Bone ended his phone call and walked back to the table. Flashing his vote-getting smile, he asked, Okay, now where were we? The next few months had me wishing for my boring life back. The days were filled with depositions with the armies of law firms the defendants from Operation Great White had snagged. The evenings were debriefings and going over reams of reports and transcripts from Operation Great White. I felt like the Great White dope forever getting involved in the whole mess. The only bright spot was getting to see my boys. They were always thrilled to be with me. T-Bone spared none of the taxpayers' expense to make sure the twins and I had a good time together. However, in the divorce proceedings, T-Bone's influence ran out. Sorry, Randall, T-Bone said. The judge assigned to your case is a cranky old bastard a year from mandatory retirement. Plus, the old goat has a hard-on for the federal government, so if I try some backdoor stuff, it may do you more harm than good. He tried to cheer me up. I got 2 guys trailing your wife in. She refused federal protection, but that does not mean we cannot keep an eye on her for the sake of your children's safety. Naturally, any bad behavior they observe can be used in a court of law. You get anything? T-Bone signed. No, not really. Your wife and is drinking a bit more than usual, and I had your sheriff set up a random traffic stop on her route home from work. She was within the legal limit, but just barely. I was thinking about the whole mess I was in. It is just so unfair, I said. T-Bone thought I was talking about his tactics. Randall, any time you find yourself in a fair fight, you have planned very poorly. Early one Sunday morning, 2 federal marshals rushed into my room and roused me out bed. Hurry, get up. We got to go now. I am not a morning person, so everything was a blur to me. When I woke up fully, I found myself in the basement of the courthouse. The room was filled with a dozen people, marshals, sheriffs, feds, but everyone seemed to defer to an older gentleman sitting at some type of table with a secretary next to him. I was stunned when a door opened and T-Bone, followed by my wife, and who appeared to be hungover, were escorted into the room, and looked bewildered, as was I, when she was placed in a chair. There was a hush in the room as T-Bone approached the older man at the desk. The U.S. Marshal next to me whispered, "That's the federal magistrate for this district." T-Bone started speaking in a clear voice. "Your Honor, we have requested this emergency hearing to have an immediate order of protection placed for the wards of one of my witnesses in an ongoing federal case." T-Bone pivoted and pointed at, and I request that we have that woman's children removed from her domicile immediately, as she has placed these minors, the federal government's key witness children, in grave danger and harm's way, and jumped out of her chair. I have never done anything to hurt my babies, and I never will. One of the U.S. Marshal put her hand on his shoulder and forced her back into the chair. T-Bone continued as if and had never spoken. "We are dealing with some violent elements in this case, and I was fearful of witness tampering and outside forces trying to coerce our case. The lady there," he pointed at, and refused offered protection, but I had resources assigned to her discreetly for her own safety. T-Bone then passed some papers to federal magistrate. I also had one of the legal owners of the house give permission to install surveillance inside the domicile for security, an astute precaution as it turned out. T-Bone nodded at a man who started a video being displayed on a 70-inch screen. The video showed the inside of my house. An obviously drunk and staggered in the door with a grungy-looking biker guy. When he turned, I recognized him. It was Chatterbox, the damn guy I had met from the outlaw biker gang that had started this whole mess. T-Bone kept up a running commentary about Chatterbox's criminal history, outstanding wants and warrants, and how he had met and that night and their interaction. I was listening with half an ear as I watched them proceed up the stairs as the video switched to a camera in the bedroom. Mercifully, T-Bone fast-forwarded through Chatterbox and sexual escapades, although watching them go through the motions of screwing at 30x speed did have some comic appeal, especially when and was sucking him, trying to get Chatterbox up for the 3rd time. T-Bone resumed normal speed when it appeared and had fallen asleep, exhausted from her exertions. Chatterbox jumped off the bed and raced down the stairs. He opened the front door and a host of bikers raced in, ransacking the house, opening every drawer and shelf. I rose out of my chair when I saw one of the bikers open my son's bedroom door. The marshal next to me whispered, "Don't worry, we were watching the whole time." There was a heavily armed SRT unit at both doors waiting to burst in if needed. My mind came back to T-Bone speaking as his guests exited the house on the video monitor. "Your Honor, the SRT team was able to apprehend the men you saw in that video. All were armed, and all had a history of violent crime. It is only good fortune that no one was injured," and started crying, sobbing into her hands. T-Bone continued talking. "The children have temporarily been relocated into a safe environment at a federal facility, and I request they be placed with their father, and later in WITSEC for their own protection," and jumped out of her chair, shaking off a marshal's attempt to restrain her. "You cannot take my children, goddamn you." The federal magistrate looked up and was bear-hugged by a man in a sheriff deputy outfit. "Ma'am, from what I have seen on video and read in this report, you willingly invited a known wanted felon into your home. Thus you placed the welfare of the children in jeopardy with utter disregard to the consequences of your actions." I watched him sign some papers. I so ordered that the minors in question be placed in the male parent's care until such time as the authorities feel they are able to enter Witsec. Any contact with the mother is prohibited and shall be prohibited until determined by the same governing authorities, keeping the welfare of the minors as priority factor, and was still struggling with the deputy when the federal magistrate stood up. I deemed these proceedings closed and walked out. I was still stunned by this turn of events that when T-Bone came over to me, I could barely speak. T-Bone, how did you pull that off? It just hit me I would get to be with my kids full time. You are the smartest man on earth. T-Bone shrugged. Most people don't change. It was a matter of time before she did something stupid. He gave me a lopsided grin. And for the record, any time you think you are the smartest guy in the room, it's time to find a new room. It like deja vu, the same juvenile room, same bed, same TV in the jail. Except this time I was now sitting on the chair with T-Bone behind me and was sitting on the bed. It's not over, Randall. And spat at me. You are not taking me away from my babies. You still looking to do that sandpaper thing on me? Wear me down. And just stared at me. The thing is that sandpaper can scratch and rip and irritate. But after all that, the item is nice and polished. The sandpaper is worthless. There was a long silence before and looked down at her hands. I didn't know how it happened. I knew I was drinking too much, but I do not want to blame the booze. I was at the gas station filling up when I came out after paying and my rear tire was flat. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. I just started crying and pushed the hair out of her eyes before speaking again. That biker guy seemed to come out of nowhere. Turns out he is a cousin from my mom's side. I knew him from my aunt's wedding a long time ago. He just pushed my car off to the side and changed the tire. I was so scared, but he just kept talking. The more he talked, the more at ease I felt. When he put his arm around me, I did not stop him. It just felt so nice to finally have someone understand what I was going through. And brought her head up to look at me. He declined the money I offered him, but said he would buy me a drink. Claimed I was in no shape to drive home. Said a drink would calm me down. At first it was fun, sitting in the bar swapping old stories and catching up. Next thing you know, I am being hustled out of my bed and my babies are being taken from me. And looked at T-Bone. My own government is trying to steal my children. What's the difference between you and them? Huh, what is the difference? T-Bone cleared his throat. Those people are greedy men who have no feeling or respect for anyone or anything. They will destroy anything that gets in their way to get what they want. T-Bone took a step forward before continuing. We work for the United States federal government. And took a deep breath. Randall, I swear it is all a big misunderstanding. One giant screw up. She reached out to touch my chest. I need you to think. Listen to your heart. I removed In's hand from my shirt. When I hear you speak in, all I can hear are banjos, and all I can think is paddle faster, get away. I finally got my boring life back. It was a strange road that gave me a new face, along with liposuction that got rid of my belly fat faster than any exercise. In a strange way to save government money, I was thrown together with a Russian mob widow during Witsec orientation. She had lost both her children in a car bomb attempt and was missing her children badly. As a coincidence, my children were missing a mom. It was a good fit, and somehow, I saw T-Bone's fingerprints all over that one. I now live in a small southern town by the coast near the middle of nowhere with a new name. The boys also got to pick their own names. It took a while to dissuade them that being called Iron Man was not an acceptable moniker. We keep them busy, and they now rarely ask questions about their past. T-Bone did run for governor, but lost in his first attempt. He is now an ambassador to some European country. And in Dad? Marshals notified me that Dad passed away. Anything left in his will, I had given to charity. Turns out, I was entitled to a portion of the unclaimed and seized funds from Operation Great White, not $1 zillion, but enough for a boring lifestyle. And still lives in the same town. You know how people talk in a small town, so she has not had an easy time of it. I send her pictures of the twins at Christmas through the U.S. Marshal Dead Drop. When they are 18, I will let them decide what they want to do. For now, I just want to enjoy being the dull, boring guy I was meant to be. Right now, we are planning a trip to Disneyland. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Michael visited his friend David's house and met a stunningly beautiful woman there. Despite her age, she was energetic and charming, and she turned out to be David's sister-in-law. They were having a good time together. Michael, how many years has it been? I was wondering if you were still alive. It's great to see you. Why has it been so long since we last talked? You hung up too quickly the last time we spoke, so we couldn't catch up. Let's talk all night at my place today. Don't even think about going home, David said. As Michael entered David's house, he was taken aback. He had never been to such a clean and well-decorated home before. None of Michael's friends were financially well off. They were all living paycheck to paycheck, and many were small business owners. Most had homes, but they were heavily burdened by mortgage payments. David, however, seemed to have received significant support from his wealthy parents. He was running a manufacturing business that supplied to large corporations and seemed to be making a lot of money. Standing next to David was a woman about 5'5", tall with a slim build. Michael didn't recognize her from the wedding and quietly asked, "Who is she?" David explained that she was his wife's sister, Emily, and quickly pulled Michael inside. David's wife had passed away a year ago due to complications during kidney dialysis. Michael felt awkward for asking and offered his condolences, saying, "I'm sorry for your loss." David responded that he was doing okay now and gave a bittersweet smile, which made Michael feel sorry for him. David, Michael, and Emily sat down together to enjoy the meal Emily had prepared. Just as they were about to have a light beer, David received a call from his factory manager. There was a problem with a machine, and he was urgently needed at the factory. David apologized. "Sorry, there's a large order coming up next week, and I need to check the machines. The equipment company is on their way, but it'll take some time. I'm really sorry, but please don't leave. Okay?" With that, he left in a hurry. Michael awkwardly started drinking beer with Emily. After a few moments of uncomfortable silence, and with some alcohol in his system, Michael finally broke the ice. "Where is David's son? Is David living here alone?" he asked. "I remember coming over to David's place after hearing he got married and had a son. I spent a lot of time playing with his kid," Emily, sipping on a beer, shared. "I went to my grandma's for the holiday weekend. I'll be heading back home tomorrow. Since Dad can't manage alone, I sometimes come over to help out with homework and chores." Emily began to open up about how things changed dramatically after her kind-hearted younger sibling passed away unexpectedly. She mentioned how she's been single and running her own business, finding it too tough to raise her son alone, without enough time for household tasks, and occasionally asking for help with the housework. David had married a woman from a reputable family after graduating from a top university, and they started their married life in a house gifted by their parents. A year later, they were blessed with a handsome son. Michael, who was single at the time, found David's son adorable and often bought him gifts. Whenever David invited him over, Michael would insist on having the son come along too. However, today, David's son wasn't there, and instead, there was someone referred to as a sister-in-law, leaving Michael at a loss for words. Emily asked Michael if he was married, prompting him to share his story. He had barely enjoyed 3 years of a dreamy, married life when his wife had an accident and passed away a few days later. Emily, looking sympathetic, held Michael's hand. Being 3 years older than Michael, Emily looked significantly younger than her age, which made Michael feel a special fondness for her. After losing his wife, Michael had tried his hand at various endeavors, both earning and losing money. He now ran an online shop, specializing in custom lettering balloons and cake toppers, which piqued Emily's interest. She mentioned her office work had slowed down and asked if he could teach her the trade. They exchanged contact information and continued drinking until David hurried back home. Emily returned to her place, and after drinking with David, Michael woke up late the next day. Stretching, he walked out of his room, only to see Emily rushing to the kitchen, embarrassed. "Did you come again?" she asked. "I was worried after you guys drank together, so I came to make breakfast," she explained. Michael told David, "Your sister-in-law seems like a warm person. It's reassuring to know she takes good care of your nephew." Since they lived in the same area, they agreed to meet often. A few days later, Michael taught Emily how to make lettering balloons and toppers. Confident in her marketing skills, Emily began promoting her new skills through various channels. "I worked on my own, taking orders until I started a business with Emily's help, and things began to grow from there. We even got a group order and were featured on a TV show." My relationship with Emily started to improve significantly. Meeting Emily, who is quick-handed and has a knack for business, was a stroke of luck, and I made sure to give her a bonus. Despite her age, Emily was still beautiful and lovely. I felt empty if I didn't talk to her even for a day. As work increased, I bought a small bed for my office, thinking it would be useful for taking naps when tired. Little did I know it would come in handy for such good occasions. After our business was featured on a TV show about successful entrepreneurs, Emily and I received countless calls from acquaintances, and we were too busy to even think about eating out. We ordered some snacks from a delivery service and continued working until we fell asleep on the bed, only to be awakened by the sound of the door opening. It was Emily coming over with a cake. "Life has been so enjoyable lately, all thanks to you," she confessed, and we decided to take a break from work and enjoy some quality time together. Laughing shyly, unable to remember the last time we had such a moment, I met Emily through David and went to see him. "Actually, I've been seeing your sister-in-law." Meeting Emily that day was a stroke of luck for me. "Thanks to you, my business is doing well, and I've met a wonderful woman," I said with a smile. However, David felt upset because he had feelings for his sister-in-law and was struggling with when to confess to her. But he decided to keep his feelings for her a secret from me until the end.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I'm Ted, a 45-year-old man. In 2020, I tragically lost my partner, Diana, to COVID-19. A common friend introduced me to Kathy, a 38-year-old woman who had previously been married and divorced due to a difficult relationship with her ex-husband, who was described as an alcoholic and abusive. Relying on my friend's advice, I began dating Kathy. However, as time passed, I started to notice significant differences in our political views. While I hold traditional values when it comes to family, life, and gender politics, Kathy leans strongly towards the left. Before I could get married, my friend who introduced me to Kathy suggested that I ask for a prenup agreement before we get married, and I was fine with it. Gave me a feeling of a movie star. I laughed at the idea, but anyways, not that it would impact my life. We decided to get married after just 3 months of dating. Kathy was quite dedicated to following left-wing politicians and held some strong political views. While she occasionally tried to sway me to her side, my commitment to my traditional family values kept me grounded. We engaged in friendly debates on various political topics from time to time, and in these discussions, I often found that she struggled to respond when I presented factual arguments. Fortunately, our love life remained relatively unaffected by her political leanings, allowing us to focus on the aspects of our relationship that we shared. I was employed as a manager in a software company, which provided me with a steady and comfortable income. Kathy, however, came from a more modest background and made the choice to stay at home and manage the household. On occasion, I would return home to find Kathy engrossed in watching news debates, and it wasn't unusual for her to greet me with angry and unwelcome comments stemming from her frustration with the world. These instances added another layer of complexity to our relationship, as our differing political views and her emotional reactions to world events created tension in our household. As 2 more years passed, I believed that we were living our lives and enjoying marital bliss. However, there were significant developments that I failed to mention. Kathy's left-leaning political views had only intensified over time. She became a strong advocate for women's liberation and empowerment. I suggested to Kathy that she could consider working to prove herself and contribute financially, but her response surprised me. She firmly believed that working and taking care of the household was my responsibility. While I could understand her perspective, I couldn't help but notice the shift from advocating empowerment and gender equality to embracing more traditional gender roles, which happened rather quickly. It appears that there were more changes in Kathy's behavior over time. She began spending a lot of time on her phone, engaging with various social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram, which seemed to consume her entire day. On certain occasions, I would come home to find that dinner hadn't been prepared, and when I inquired about it, she simply stated that she was busy. I was left puzzled, as cooking was one of her responsibilities. That night, Kathy did engage in an intimate encounter with me, but it felt notably different from our usual interactions. She displayed a more dominating attitude, which was a significant departure from our usual dynamics. Coming home early one day, I was surprised to find my wife engaged in an enthusiastic conversation with our single, gym-loving 27-year-old neighbor. As soon as she saw me, she abruptly ended their discussion and hurried over to me, greeting me with a passionate, full-blown French kiss, complete with the whole tongue thing. It was entirely unexpected, and it felt like she wanted our neighbor to witness the display. This left me feeling both surprised and concerned about the message she might have been trying to convey. It was a departure from her usual behavior. I was taken aback by the passionate kiss and my wife's reaction when I questioned her about it. Her response, a simple smile followed by a question if I didn't like it, left me speechless. I decided to change and process what had just happened. In the days that followed, I noticed more changes in her behavior. Kathy started working out and became significantly more active in our sex life, with a frequency I hadn't experienced before. Then, one morning while having my coffee, I noticed Kathy was still in bed, and her phone was left on the kitchen table. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up her phone, finding a video featuring a famous former adult movie actor offering tips for marriage.
Oh, we're comparing stats. Baby girl doesn't know that I am Tom Brady at this game. Married at 18, divorced at 21. Second marriage, married at 25, divorced at 28. Third engagement, engaged at 29, ended it at 30, but I kept the ring. I'm still keeping Tom Brady on his toes. We should not be afraid to leave these men. We are not stuck with these people. Marriage is not a sanctimonious thing. It is paperwork. It's something, it's a commitment you make to someone. But if you feel like you're not getting anything from that commitment and you're trying, you gotta go. You gotta go. You have to go. I know it's difficult to fill out paperwork and to make appointments and to do all of these things, but this is your fucking life. Do you want to be stuck with someone? Period. Do you want to be...
What would a woman who had her legs open for the world to see? Will suggest you get divorced. For heaven's sake, she has multiple failed marriages, and now she advises women to get divorced just like her. She has earned money in from her career in the corn industry. She has money from her multiple divorce settlements. What does a common woman, who just is a housewife or just works a normal job, has? Does she have the financial security as the Kron star? I was disgusted and wanted to talk to my wife. I decided to go to work and have this discussion with my wife tonight. So, I got dressed and left for work. In the office I could not work, and I wanted to quickly return home. So I asked my boss for a day off and quickly left. I reached home, and as I was walking towards my front door, I found it open and I walked in, and I could hear moans coming from my bedroom, and my heart started beating fast and I was not sure what is going on. I walked towards my room and found my wife naked on top of the neighbor guy. I was shocked and stunned. I somehow gathered myself and managed to get my phone out to start filming their act. They were so involved that they did not notice my presence, and I walked out quickly. I rushed out of the house and went for a long drive and kept driving till I reached the nearest beach. I stood there and let the wind wash my face. My tears had dried and I was desperate to get my life sorted. After a few hours I called my lawyer, and he asked me to come and meet him. I was fortunate to get an appointment the same day, and I shared the video with him. The lawyer assured me that adultery is a ground for divorce, and he would try and save as much money from being split as possible. I then told my lawyer that I do have a prenup. As per the prenup agreement, if I cheat on my wife, I would have to let go of 70% of all my assets. If she cheats, I would not give her anything. Well, I now started to thank my friend who suggested me to sign a prenup agreement. The lawyer asked me to cut all contacts with my wife and asked me to leave my house till she is evicted from my house. I discussed with my lawyer, and after some discussion I sent her a message stating that I was going out of town for an emergency meeting and will not be able to be at home. I went to a local motel, and meanwhile my wife kept calling me and I kept ignoring her calls. In the meanwhile, my lawyer also hired a private investigator to do a background check for Kathy. What came out was nothing short of shocking. I knew she was previously divorced. I was told her previous husband was alcoholic and abusive. However, what came out that it was the other way around. She used to work as paid protester for the left politicians. She used to charge money to show up and protest for political reasons. Once her husband asked her to stop, she framed him of being an alcoholic. It turned out that the guy never drank alcohol. He was beaten up by Kathy, and once cops were called to stop her. They got divorced after she had busted his head open in one of their arguments. She robbed the guy dry and left him broken. I felt so lucky and relieved that I will be saving everything that I have worked for. After 5 days, I met the lawyer, and he introduced me to the famed private investigator. We decided to serve my wife that very day. He called the local police station and spoke to his friend, who agreed to help us. We drove to my house and again found my door open. We all walked inside and once again found my wife in action with the neighbor. This time I was not silent, called her name, and she was shocked to see 4 people standing in her bedroom watching her get pumped. She started shouting and hurled abuses and crying. She kept swinging between blaming and calling me names to saying how sorry she is and want forgiveness. The PI was filming all of this. The sheriff walked up and handed Kathy the divorce papers and said, "You have been served." I then broke my silence and asked Kathy to get dressed, and she has 2 hours to leave my house. She started shouting and said that I was abusive, and I have been abusive with her throughout the marriage. I kept quiet, and my lawyer then spoke up, asking her to connect with him in case she wants any communication with me. I asked the sheriff to help ensure that Kathy leaves my house. He asked Kathy to hurry up, and in case she has any complaints she can connect with the local police. Kathy got dressed and packed her bags and walked into the neighbor's house. I slept in the guest room that night and next day sold my marital bed. I felt disgusted to use it anymore. I threw out some of Kathy's stuff in the garbage. I waited for the divorce proceedings to start. I got a call from my office asking me to go on a leave as there is a video going around where a woman is saying that I am an abusive man. I knew what is going on. Kathy wants to finish my reputation. If there is one thing a man loves apart from his family, it is his reputation. I was now going to fight back. A few days later, in the court, Kathy came up with all sorts of complaints that I used to physically assault her and torture her mentally. She stated that I hit her on multiple occasions, and once it was so bad that she had to be hospitalized. Kathy was once hospitalized. She did fall in the bathroom and was hospitalized. I was a bit afraid how this will be seen by the court. My lawyer was an expert with taking care of such tactics. He proved with my digital presence that I was 20 miles away from my wife when she fell and was hospitalized. He produced the 911 call that was made by Kathy when she fell. Also, brought the 911 respondents as witness, who confirmed that I was not present and confirmed that Kathy did not mention that she was assaulted by anyone. Kathy also accused me of mental torture and how I used to make her feel that she is from a modest background and never used to care for even her minimum requirements. My lawyers produced all the credit card statements where Kathy had been shopping for her minimum requirements. Kathy even accused me of cheating on her and even bringing other women in our marital bed. This was once again busted as every visitor is documented on camera when they enter our gated housing society. There was no such evidence that I ever brought any guest to our house. It was now my turn. My lawyer produced 2 video evidences where Kathy was on bed with the neighbor guy. On watching this, Kathy stated that it was I who asked her to sleep with the neighbor and I wanted to watch. The judge had enough and asked Kathy to talk when she is asked to. My lawyer then went on to produce the viral video where Kathy was accusing me of being an abusive husband. He requested that this video be stopped and Kathy apologized for propagating false narrative. The court took into account all the present evidences and stated that Kathy did cheat on me and asked her to take her video down and offer an unconditional apology. Kathy then again stood up and asked for alimony and part in the property that I hold. The judge quickly reminded her that is she speaking out of line and need to sit quietly. The judge then asked Kathy to come forward. She walked up and the judge told her that it is clear that she has cheated and there is no evidence against me. She was then directed by the court to make another post with an unconditional apology for me, and also told her that she will not get any money from me, as it was part of the prenup agreement that she will not get any money if she cheated. Kathy was stunned and started crying in the courtroom. She started shouting at everyone in the court that she is being victimized as she is a woman. When the judge asked her to be quiet, she screamed. Exactly like the weird leftist women who scream when they don't have anything logical to say. She was quickly taken into custody by the cops and taken out of the court. I was granted my divorce, and the judge empathized with me, stating that we have seen good men losing their livelihood because of women like Kathy. He stated that he was happy for me that I was able to get all the evidence to prove my innocence in Kathy's crimes. I thanked him, and then the court was closed. Everyone dispersed once it was over, and Kathy later returned to my neighbor's house. Next day, Kathy did post an apology as directed by the court, and the other video was taken down. The neighbor later walked up to me and apologized and asked for my help to get Kathy out of his house. He stated that it was all good as long as Kathy was not living with him. Now it is a nightmare. He also mentioned that Kathy is forcing him to marry her as she got divorced because of him. I asked him to contact my lawyer for a way out. I gave his number and walked away. The lawyer asked him get his house covered with cameras and not let Kathy know about it. He asked him to video document every interaction with Kathy. Over the next 3 days, he took Kathy out for vacation and gave the house to someone for covering every corner of his house with cameras and microphones. I did not interact a lot with the neighbor, just did not want to run into Kathy. A few days later, I heard screams and loud noises from the neighbor's house. I was worried and called 911. Cops arrived, and I was shocked to see what had transpired. I saw that the neighbor guy was covered in blood, and Kathy, who now had short hair dyed in blue, screaming that she is the victim, not the criminal. The cops were trying to handcuff her. She started fighting with the cops and even tried to run. She got tased and put in handcuffs. She was thrown in the cop car and taken to custody. I walked to the neighbor guy and asked him if he is okay. He hugged me and thanked me for the suggestion to connect with my lawyer. He later got restraining order against Kathy and cut all connections with her. I took him out for a drink, and we really bonded well. He was a nice guy, just made a mistake for falling for Kathy. Well, I made the same mistake, so cannot blame him a lot. He introduced me to the gym, and now after a year I am a gym buff, and we are good friends. So now I have a great job, great health, and good friends. I do get a lot of attention from women. I am reluctant to get into a serious relationship as of now. Hopefully I will get into one someday. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
He stands a staggering 6 feet 4 inches, blonde curly hair that falls just to his shoulders and frames his face like a halo. Bright green eyes find my dull brown ones, and his gaze is penetrating, seeking out something more and setting my body on fire in the process. If just his gaze could do this to me, I wonder what the rest of him can do. A chill runs down my spine as I think of him. A smile crosses his face, and as if he were reading my mind, he slowly crosses the room to stand a mere foot away from me at the bar. Close enough to touch, yet far enough away to be respectful. His jeans and t-shirt fit him snugly, and he smells amazing, like rain and freshly chopped wood. I peer up at him from my bar stool and smile sweetly before taking a small swig of my beer. His eyes snap to my lips as they press against the bottle, and I could swear I heard him groan. I force my eyes away from his lithe form, cursing myself for caving into his rugged beauty. You don't live in this town, and not at least know of the man that stands beside me now. No, he is definitely the talk of the town 95% of the time, and 90% of that 95 is usually about something bad he'd been caught doing in the past. He doesn't talk much, but his lack of verbal communication is made up for by his tell-all eyes, which have let me see a few things that make me believe that not everything you hear is true. This place has been my home since I was 9 years old, and in those 15 years, Damian Clearwaters has become the quintessential bad boy here in Round Rock, Texas. Growing up in Williamson County, everyone knew who you were and what you were doing, so having a private life without your parents finding out wasn't necessarily an easy task, but we survived. At 9 years old, I was afraid of meeting new people and was shy to a fault. Damian Clearwaters was a quiet and sweet boy who lived in the house next to mine, and when summer officially came, I would invite him to swim in my backyard with me. June 19th came around 2 months after my move and brought his 10th birthday with it. His parents held a large party in the backyard of his house, and everyone he knew from school came, which allowed me to make new friends in preparation for the upcoming school year at Fern Bluff. On the 22nd, Damian sneaked over to my house and knocked softly on the window just after dark. This was new for us. I watched worriedly as he climbed into my room, praying he wouldn't make a sound that would alert my parents to his arrival. He closed the window and put his forehead to the glass. I had never seen Damien cry in all of the time we had played together, not even when he cut his knee open on the sidewalk. That night I hugged him as he fought back the tears silently. He filled me in on how his parents had told him his grandmother had passed away, and I held him close as long as he would let me. Just after his 13th birthday, Damien Clearwater's world was turned upside down. Damien's mother left his father while everyone was gone for their daily routines. She left a note for his father saying she was leaving them because she didn't want to be a wife and mother anymore. Instead, she wanted the exciting life she had dreamed of as a young girl, so she packed her things and headed for Houston. But things didn't quite work out that way. She made it just outside of Round Rock before being hit by an 18-wheeler whose driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. She was killed instantly. Damien's father received the call about his wife while still at work, only to return home to find her note, which ultimately broke him and drove him to drink. Following the funeral, Damien and I sat in his bedroom floor, sitting so close that our shoulders touched as I let him tell me all the good things about his mom that he could remember. Everything changed after that day. Damien's father Greg drank more than ever, and Damien's secret trips to my house increased tenfold, as did his father's anger. He silently wore the evidence of his father's mood swings, ignoring the looks of pity from teachers. By the end of the year, Damien slept on the floor next to my bed every night to get away from his father's cruel words and anger. When Damien's 14th birthday came around, he had stopped talking to everyone, including me, and started acting out against his father. He landed himself in juvenile hall more times than I can count for fighting or destruction of property. I recall one time in particular when he was put into juvenile for beating up a 17-year-old boy that had been taunting him about his mother's decision to leave his worthless shit, but couldn't even do that right. The boy ended up in the hospital with a few broken ribs and some other minor injuries, but I don't recall anyone else talking about Damien that way again, at least not out loud. Although he was wild and seemingly dangerous, his ways calmed down dramatically when his father died of alcohol poisoning the month before Damien's 19th birthday. He sold his childhood home and all of its contents before moving 2 hours away to Fort Hood for military training. After completing a 5-year tour with the Army, he returned home to Round Rock looking amazing. Not that he left looking bad. He bought an old ranch house, and many of the women were swooning over his body as he repaired the old home. With the almost 2 years he's been home, his hair has grown out to the length that makes you want to dig your fingers into it and pull. The Army put some meat on his bones, making him lean but so muscular you could grate cheese on his abs, or so I've heard from local gossip going around. He was always gorgeous, and at more than one point in my childhood I was convinced we would get married and live happily ever after with 2 green-eyed boys and a sweet little girl running around our home. I thought I gave up that dream when he left, which led me to decide to attend Texas State and exclusively date a local football star that led our team on to be state champions. We planned to marry and move to Dallas, but those plans died when I caught him in bed with one of the linebackers from his team. That was definitely a surprise to say the least, but we're still good friends and I plan to attend their commitment anniversary party next month. I graduated shortly before opening my own bookstore here in town, offering new and used books to the community, where we had to drive out of town for a bookstore beforehand. My shop is decently sized, has a large selection, a small cafe, and has a window that spans the entire front of the store where I have set up a sitting nook for reading and enjoying beverages. Being the only bookstore actually in town, my shop is fairly popular, and even after being open for 3 years, I still get a solid flow of customers daily. Even with Damien back in Round Rock, I never really expected to see him face-to-face again. I was going over the list of books that had been specially ordered by customers when the bell to the door chimed and alerted me to a new customer. To say I was shocked at who was browsing the shelves of the store would be an understatement. I'm not exactly sure what I expected of our first meeting in years, but it wasn't what actually happened. Damien browsed the aisles for a good 30 minutes before bounding up to the counter with an armful of books in tow and a blank stare on his face. I skipped idle conversation and rang up his purchases before I finally broke and asked him how long he'd been back home and if he were staying. "Are you back home for good, Damien? Or just visiting?" I tried to seem friendly and smile sweetly at the beast of man before me, but his blank stare turned mean before he spoke. "Do I know you?" He looked for a name tag, but I wasn't wearing one. "Look, just because I grew up here doesn't mean you people know me. You know what I was and what you thought of me, but you never knew me. So stop trying to pry into my life." His voice was pure acid, and I almost wanted to cry from the hatred it held, but I stood firm. "Listen up, Damien Ray Clearwaters. You speak to me like that again and I'll castrate you. You understand? I think all those nights you crawled through my bedroom window to get away from your father allows me the privilege of saying that I at least knew you at one time. And just in case you're still lost on who I am, It's Gabby and I don't appreciate your tone, and I will not be spoken to like that in my own damn store. He stared at me with his mouth open, then rightfully looked ashamed as he nodded solemnly. I'm so sorry, Gabby. I didn't know it was you. My heart broke as I watched him walk out the door and disappear into the street without turning around. It was then that I knew I was still in love with the jackass that's had my heart since I was 9 years old. We haven't really spoken much since that day 2 years ago, but shortly after the incident at my store I found a beautiful leather-bound journal wrapped up on my front porch. Even though it didn't have a note of any kind, I knew exactly who it was from and cherish it as I contemplate what to fill the empty pages with one day. Even though there hasn't been much communication, there is definitely sexual tension between the two of us. Hell, the whole town wants a piece of him, and I'm not too proud to say I do too. But that's not all I want, of course. I catch brief glimpses of him in town while I'm shopping or working at my shop, and I still catch myself daydreaming about 2 miniature copies of Damien and a miniature version of myself running around us happily. I quickly chastise myself for longing after him still after all these years, even after he has pushed me away from him so many times. Which brings me to now, where I sit drinking my beer at the local bar Quinn's, and my body is literally vibrating with want for him. I watch from the corner of my eye as he summons the bartender and orders a beer. The band is a local tonight and is actually pretty decent, so I lean back against the bar as I watch them play and gather my wits and courage. I feel his eyes on me, and I know they've been on me the entire night since he walked in the door. I summon all of my courage and finish off my beer as I turn toward him. Are you just going to stare at me all night? Or are you going to say something, cowboy? Because let me tell you, I'm no eye candy, but you look like you're going to pounce on me any second. So here's my question. Should I play coy and act like I don't want it, or should I just pounce your butt myself instead? I watch with an amused look as he chokes down the mouthful of beer he had just taken a drink of and coughed a few times before staring at me with shocked eyes. His mouth moves like he's trying to talk, but nothing is coming out. Before I could let myself run for the door and cry myself to sleep at home, I stand up and get real damn close to him. I run my nose along his jaw line and stop at his ear. Listen, cowboy, I'm tired of playing games, so if you want me, I'll be on the dance floor. You have 2 minutes to make up your mind before I walk out that door with your last opportunity. I hope like hell to see you out there. Then I do something that shocks even me, and I know it's a good thing I'm not ordering another beer. I graze his earlobe with my teeth and walk away before he could see the shock in my own face. I don't make it 3 steps away before I feel hands on my back, a 5 o'clock shadow rubbing against the back of my neck, and a warm, hard body pressed against me. I distinctly feel the outline of something pressing into my lower back, and by God, my body shivers in delight. Lifting my arms above me, I seek out his gorgeous long locks and dig my fingers in deep, pulling his lips closer to my skin as I dance against him. He guides my body with his hands as we dance together in perfect rhythm to the band's music that is more than long forgotten. Whiskers skirt across my shoulder and up behind my ear. My skin burns in their wake until his lips meet my ear. Let's get out of here. His voice husky and rough with want. Unable to trust my voice, I nod and allow him to lead me out of the crowded bar hand in hand. Reaching the parking lot, he leads me to his truck and stops me against it with a searing and demanding kiss that makes my core ache. 10 minutes later, and we are in his bed, hands roaming over our body and leaving trails of fire everywhere they touch. A shrill sound coming from somewhere in the room distracts me from the heavenly torture of his lips. Ignore it. They'll call back if it's important. My mind returns to mush as his fingers moved, then my cell phone ringing yet again. His forehead rests as he sighs. He grabs my phone from his bedside table and hands over the offending object. What? Ma'am, is this Gabriella Houston, the owner of Books Revisited? Yes, and who is this? Ma'am, I'm Officer Christians with the Round Rock Police Department. It seems your bookstore was vandalized and broken into just after 10 p.m. tonight. I'm going to need you to come down to your store, please, as soon as possible. Already up and getting dressed, I notice I'm putting my jeans on backwards before fixing them and hanging up the phone. Sensing the drastic change in mood, Damien dresses and ushers me to his truck, only speaking long enough to ask where we are headed. My body is broken out in a cold sweat. The bookstore is the only thing I have left of my parents, and now it has been damaged by hoodlums, no doubt. The ride to Main Street is silent and quick as Damien speeds through town to our destination. My heart stops cold in my chest as we draw closer, and I could make out the damage done to my store. The window that completely made up the storefront from floor to ceiling is busted, and what still there is covered in graffiti. The antique wooden front door is split straight down the middle, and when I step inside, I see most of the inventory lying in the floor haphazardly. I feel lightheaded and my chest constricts painfully. I can't catch my breath and feel myself falling towards the floor but stop when caught by two strong arms before impact. I turning into his chest, let go and crying harder than I have since my parents' funeral. My body shakes like an earthquake as Damien's arm squeezes me and holds me close as he soothingly runs his fingers through my hair. I'm completely drained, emotionally and physically, by the time the police allow me to leave the scene. Damien helped to board up the front of the store with sheets of plywood and promised to help me clean up the glass and books tomorrow morning. I vaguely remember being carried to Damien's truck, only briefly waking up when Damien's arms pull me closer to his chest in his sleep. I awake to the soft snoring of the big bear next to me. The sunlight is streaming through the break in the curtains of his bedroom window, and I know instantly that there's no way I'm going back to sleep. I stretch out and think back to what was interrupted last night, and my body heats up in that familiar way almost immediately. I skim my fingers over the small chest hairs that lightly cover his muscular chest. His soft snores are replaced with a purring sound of contentment as I kiss my way up his chest and move to straddle him, all without waking him fully. I continued what was left behind last night. Hell, promise me you'll wake me up like this again sometime. I bite back a giggle. Once we were done with our lovemaking, I listen to his rapid heartbeat as we catch our breath, his fingers running through my messy hair. I feel his chest rumble with laughter, and I look up at him with a weird look. I swear to God, woman, you can wake me up any damn time if you do it just like that. The army has nothing on you with its wake-up calls. His booming laughter fills the room, and he kisses my bare shoulder. His laughter fades off as we look into each other's eyes, and I watch as a smile spreads across his face, making me smile in return. I've waited so long for that, Gabby. You have no idea. I smile as I think to myself, guess cleaning up my store will just have to wait till later. He helped me clean up my store, and we both knew it wouldn't end soon. We started dating and have enjoyed each other's company ever since. I hope we will continue together until our last breath. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.